It is September 3rd, 2020 by my calendar. Happy Thursday, everybody. This is the Development and Governmental Relations Subcommittee of Holyoke City Council. It is a pleasure to be here with all of you. Let me first introduce the committee, and then we'll dive right into the agenda. The agenda looks gosh awful, and I apologize for that, but I think we can get through it, and we'll just see where it goes, okay? So with us on the Zoom meeting from the committee itself is Gladys Abron Martinez, Howard Graney, Michael Sullivan, and myself, the chairman. Councilor Tallman is a member of the committee, and Councilor Tallman has some personal commitments, and Councilor Tallman will not be here this evening, if everybody understands it. Now, we do have an agenda, and the first thing on the agenda is the prior meeting minutes. The prior meeting minutes are not available, so we're going to skip that one. And then I'm going to ask for a motion to go to agenda item number 2. I'm going to have a motion to take it off the table and open up the public hearing, please.
So moved.
Motion made and seconded to remove from the table the following item and to open a public hearing. To consider a major plan change to the Holyoke Redevelopment Authority's urban renewal plan. The hearing is being held in accordance with MGL 121B and 760 CMR 12. And with us, let's see, we have Marcos Marrero. Marcos, just leave it unmuted, your thing. Just leave it unmuted. Mr. Dijek, John Dijek is with us. I think we have several members of the HRA committee. So just remind me, Marcos, who's the chair of the HRA committee?
Jay Willihan.
Jay, oh, good. Okay, and the Ward 5 school committee elected member, Jay Willihan is here. Jay is also the chair of the HRA. So Jay, if you just leave your mic unmuted, so we don't have to go do the back and forth on all that. And
Mr. Chairman, should I probably call my meeting to order?
Well, why would just a point? Why would you do that? Are we in a joint hearing? Is this? I don't have it on my agenda. This is a joint hearing.
Mr. Chair, it's not a joint hearing, but by just to comply with open meeting law, because we have these 3 HRA members here, and they may be discussing official business. We publicized a meeting of the HRA in case we had quorum, and we do. So the proper thing to do is open a meeting. So we're complying with open meeting law. That's all.
Yeah, that's it.
Okay, I don't think I was advised of that, was I?
If you were not, I apologize and take responsibility for that. The HRA is still guests within the public hearing and meeting of the DGR. It's not meant to be a dually run public hearing.
Okay, so since we don't have legal counsel here, I'll just make the call myself. So, all right, so what I was going to do, and I'll just direct this to Marcos, but everybody can hear me, obviously. What I was going to ask is the chair introduce all the HRA members that are here. I wasn't necessarily going to have them open up a meeting because it's because I didn't know they were meeting together. But since that's the case, and out of abundance of caution, we certainly can have them. I just want to make it clear that that this is not a joint meeting of a city council subcommittee and the HRA. So I just want to make that clear. And but when somebody wants to speak, the way I do it, just to make it clear, that committee members go first. City council members that are not members of the committee go second, and then everybody else goes after that. Okay. So, and then you've got to, and believe me, I'm the least proficient of all of you in doing this, but there's at the bottom of the Zoom, you can sort of raise your hand electronically. If you click on participants, and then you'll see that little thing for raise hand. I'll do my best to make sure I recognize anybody. Once we get once we get through the process, when I say I'll open up to the public. So though we are in a public hearing right now because we've already opened it, I just want to make it clear that, don't be, don't do that. Just hit the button, hit the little button. Your hand will go up. I'll eventually see it, and I will duly recognize you. So Jay, Mr. Chairman of the HRA, do you want to call your meeting to order just to comply with open meeting law, please?
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just called the meeting of the HRA to order. I'm not sure who's here in the audience. Carl.
Present.
John Wolahan here. Thomas Creed.
Yes.
He's here. Patricia Duffy.
Here.
Here. And Gladys LeBron Martinez.
Here.
Okay, thank you.
Wow, Gladys just doing it all today. I'm
5 for 5. Thank you.
Wow. Jay, you run a tight ship over there. It doesn't shock me.
There you go. That's Carl.
Doesn't shock me. Crack that whip for no shows. Okay, so since we are in a public hearing, what we generally do is we hear from the department head first. In this case, it's Marcos. And Marcos, why don't you tell us from your perspective what's happening, please?
Sure. So two things. If I start breaking up, please interrupt me. I know there was Wi-Fi problems last time, and hopefully that's been corrected. Second thing, I want to just check with the chair of the HRA whether he has anything that he wants to say introductory before I delve into a presentation, because I'll be screen sharing the presentation while I speak.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Morris. Just quick, this is just a really an amendment to the original plan that was done, I think, in 2012. I know Mr. Creed was on the committee back then. He might want to say some words, and Mr. Carl was also there. So they were part of the original plan. So they might want to make some.
Well, as much as I want to hear from them, and I do, I'd rather hear from the department head first, and then we'll go back into the history books at that point.
Okay.
So Mr. Marrero, take it away.
Okay, so what you're seeing now is I'm sharing a presentation screen, and you probably saw everyone just move to the side to see the presentation. Okay, so that's what just hit your screen. So as a refresher, the city created an urban renewal plan in 2012 as part of a pretty lengthy process that started. Its roots at least had its inception in 2007 with South Holyoke revitalization strategies, doing a center city vision plan in 2009, and then culminating in the urban renewal plan in 2012, which was approved by the mayor, city council, and then the state through the Department of Housing and Community Development. And the idea of having an urban renewal plan, in this one in particular, which is the largest in the state, that encompasses our entire center city, basically 391, Resnick Boulevard, Beach Street, the river, is connecting people and places, the four main neighborhoods of the center city, constructing public infrastructure, aiding in the creation of new building stock, and reducing light, improving job opportunities in the center city, and of course leading to a vibrant and prosperous city, which is what we all desire at the end of the day. The process, as I described, was lengthy. We back in the 2012 engaged a consultant, BHB, to help in doing the whole thing. There was a citizen advisory committee as well that was consulted in the entire document to take what was in the master plan and the center city vision plan and turn that into goals and objectives for the urban renewal plan. And of course, trying to integrate that with the momentum of the city that carried through the early 2000s into the 2010s or the 2010s. I don't know what we call this decade. Or the decade that just passed. key things that an urban renewal plan allows to do. It identifies, of course, key areas and neighborhoods that it prioritizes. It indicates what the public sector wants to happen at certain sites. It allows the redevelopment authority to acquire property, and it could do that for an open market transaction, which is what the HRA has always done. It doesn't view them with eminent domain powers, similar to what the city or the housing authority has, for example, for specific properties. And it calls for public infrastructure improvements as well that the HRA may not directly do, but would be related to the types of investment that the city wants to see, and allows the city and HRA to make the case to funders. And I'll talk about examples of where we've done that in the upcoming slides. This is from the old presentation, so many of you will remember this. But just a note on land aggregation. That's one of the tools at the disposal for the redevelopment authority, that it can act as a market actor and acquire properties to aggregate them and facilitate development where fractured ownership either on one parcel, right, many people owning one company or one property, doesn't allow for a resolution, or sites are constrained and therefore buying other parcels to allow for development to happen. And as I mentioned, the urban renewal plan that we have in Holyoke is the largest in the state, over 700 acres. So beyond having goals and objectives for the entire center city plan, it also has kind of like a neighborhood approach, and it's identified 10 areas of focus and where the properties listed on the plan are aggregated, right? So there are 10 areas, and we will go into those here. This is an overview map of the center city within the red boundaries, right? Bounded by the north and the east by the river, on the west roughly by Beach Street, and on the south roughly by Resnick Boulevard and 391. The shaded areas in blue were the demarcations of the areas in the original plan in 2012. The outlines in orange are the amended areas for the ones that are in blue. So you can see that they've been expanded, kind of to focus to create better boundaries of what we see as areas that have more things in common, and building off of actions that already happened over the last 8 years, and we'll get into each one of those individually. So this is area 1. It is from Beach Street to Elm Street off of through Dwight. It's been the focus of a couple of projects over the last couple of years. Most notably, and probably most familiar to the council, is the one at 123 Pine Street. It's a 4-story building. It's under a development agreement with Valley Opportunity Council, and it was subject of a site aggregation, some cleanup work that we did as well in the basement, and that would be a site for 8 housing units. Also relocating the community garden that's there across the street. One thing that also happened over the last couple of years, the house on parcel, and I don't know if you can see my mouse, but on parcel 18, that house burnt down. And so we also worked a swap of land with One Holyoke CDC, where HRA could get some land in South Holyoke that it decided could swap, just a straight swap with this one. And then it allowed One Holyoke to have parcels, which it's lining up for a housing project. So that's a note on some of the stuff that's happened recently. We're now adding 2 properties to the urban renewal plan. The first one is the property of the house that burned down and has now been demolished. And the idea behind doing that is, and that's this lot right here. It's to make sure that as the lot right next to it has a goal of doing housing, that we update the plan and say, these 2 lots together. The idea is to have housing on it. That's the intent of One Holyoke and what they would be doing. We don't really intend to acquire it unless something were to happen to the organization where they can no longer do the project, and then the redevelopment authority could potentially step in to take it on and seek another developer. Similarly, 712 Dwight Street, it's been discussed with the council before. It's a 4-story building. It's actually been put out to request for proposals, and it's been approved. So this is not an attempt to buy it back, but an attempt to put in the plan what we are doing now, because the lot right next to it, it was in the plan, and our intent with this has been to have them be a joint development. So just making sure that it's in the plan what we're doing, so that it's transparent and folks understand where this area, where this gateway is going, independent of any particular project that's before us now. Area 2 has been amended as far as its boundaries to be bigger, kind of to encompass what was partially Area 4 before, the area of Lyman Terrace and around Dwight Street further to the east of Area 1, because it has a lot of commonalities and projects that kind of have supported each other, from the upgrades on Front, Dwight, and Heritage to Veterans Park, and others. The Chestnut housing apartments that were significant rehab after being 10 years aggregating tax credits and other financing. There's been a complete transformation as well of the Lyman Terrace neighborhood, with a significant amount of public works there, mostly financed through MassWorks grants. I think it's total almost $7 million in MassWorks, and over $60 million in a combination of financing and tax credits for the Lyman Terrace neighborhood, which was a complete gut rehab of 167 housing units. And there's a number of properties being added here. You can see them. You can see in gray, dark gray shaded the properties that were already on the plan. The ones in, I guess that's, I don't know, deep orange, some sort of red, are the ones being added. And we start seeing them on this slide. On the top left, those are, I think, four properties. They're essentially the parking garage across from the post office. So looking to add those so that it's clear that the intent for that is some sort of residential and potentially mixed use with a first floor commercial, because it's abutting a high use corridor in the post office, but also in Veterans Park being kind of like the main downtown plaza, with the bus transportation center. It's also suggesting that it would probably be in the best interest of that site to be rezoned to something that would better allow for that, which has been kind of what at least informally has been discussed often with the owner, but this kind of cements it publicly. On the top right, 174 Lyman Street. It's a rather sizable building. I think it's 3 stories, very long. It has a long history, at least in my tenure with the city, about 8.5 years of switching ownership several times. But the constraints of the site of not having any space for parking has been a big constraint, and we feel that adding it to the plan could help either identify investors, a developer, if the HOA were to acquire it, or help in the aggregation of public dollars, right, and public subsidies where needed, and it would likely need it to do the alphabet soup of the layered financing. On the bottom left, 158 Chestnut Street. It's a former garage. There are 2 parcels associated with that building. One which is the building itself, and another one which is a vacant lot. It is, as I understand, it's significantly behind on taxes and likely would end up being a city tax title taking. It is in a otherwise pretty well used corridor Nearby, it has Holyoke Gas and Electric, the Victory Theater, the school department, and there has been some additional development along Chestnut Street, including one or two blocks down Library Commons. And then 145 Hammond Street on the bottom right, it is an auto use site on Veterans Park. So it is kind of out of place in terms of when you think of us, the core of the center city, very vibrant, pedestrian friendly area. It seems to go through cycles where it's used and others where it seems vacant or it's used for warehousing. And so the idea there would be to leverage some sort of investment or identify a developer or work with the existing owner so that the use auto use in front of an otherwise very pedestrian heavy area. Other additions to the left is the former Mater Dolorosa property. It now, after the demolition of the church building itself, it is now one of two completely vacant blocks in the city. So it represents a significant potential for development. 111 Line, it's on the plan to try to open a right of way that continues Front Street into Pulaski Park. Interestingly enough, coincidentally enough, we're doing a walking audit with the community builders who now administers Lyman Terrace. Front Street used to run all the way to Pulaski Park at some point in the late 60s, along with other development north of Lyman Street. It seems to have been discontinued, although you can still see the markings of the public right of way there. And so Pulaski Park became at that point a park that was a little bit more hidden from the rest of the downtown. And right now, the only access point for vehicles to the recently rehabilitated park is through kind of like a driveway through a neighborhood, which is more intrusive to that neighborhood. But also from a pedestrian standpoint, the connectivity really isn't there. And now that Front Street has been redone, or well, it's soon to be completed, it would really complete an emerald necklace in the city, connecting different parks with tree-lined streets. So the idea there is mostly focused on the access, not on the property themselves, the buildings themselves. And then the other one rounding out the Lyman Terrace neighborhood is 120 Front Street. Like the buildings flanking it on both sides, its heritage is heavily industrial. The other buildings have one has undergone a transformation. The other one is undergoing a transformation into a commercial building, office space. That zoning from, as far as I can tell, decades ago, has long passed from being an industrial zone to being a downtown business zone, abutting a large residential area. And particularly when the rail line was taken out, which I assume was at least in the early 80s, and prior to Heritage Park being opened, those properties are no longer industrial. So the idea is putting it here so that we could leverage the property to have uses that are more congruent with the neighborhood. And you'll see that pattern with others that we'll be discussing. On Area 3, there's been several. So Area 3 has kind of been squared off to include more of Churchill, so that the character of the neighborhood is better understood for developments that we pursue. A few highlights in Area 3, basically the Churchill neighborhood. Library Commons, if you haven't been by there, it's moving full steam ahead. That construction. The city and the housing authority have secured site control for the other large vacant lot there, and what is going to be is still up in the air. At some point, there was a proposal for a school, but as the plan said, if it's not school, it can be housing, and so the housing authority would have already has secured site control for that. The house at 278 Pine Street, it was a former vacant building. It was coming down. It was taken down, and an historic house from Route 5 was saved in conjunction with One Holyoke and placed there. And then the Armory was the most significant property on the plan when it was developed. And I know it's the subject of another order tonight that will be discussed in more detail. But we've been trying to identify a developer for that, and we've done some significant due diligence and engineering on it, which we'll be discussing later tonight. Properties that have been added in this area in anticipation of the potential projects in the coming years. One of the, I guess, categories that I would say is historic properties. When historic properties start deteriorating and or have tenancy that may not have the deep pockets to maintain, we want to have a tool, or in this case, the redevelopment authority, in a position of being able to do something more proactive to help out and or develop identify investors or developers to acquire, help redevelop the property. So in that vein, you see in the top left portion of the presentation, 377 Apple Street. It's actually for sale now. Not that the HRA is ready to make an offer, but that's because the organization that owns it, which is a church, they don't have the financial means right now to do the maintenance required to stabilize the building. It is otherwise in pretty good shape internally, but it does require some masonry work. It's a pretty significantly historic building. So the building itself and its parking lot in the back and all the way, the properties all the way to I think Suffolk Street are on the plan. Up to the top right on the presentation, 235 and 237 Chestnut Street. One is a church. The other is a Mason building. They are also significantly historic, right across from the library. Again, not something that the HR is looking to acquire immediately, but wanting to be in a position of either helping or helping identify races or if need be, facilitating an acquisition with a developer or investor. 173 Elm Street is right next to 377 Appleton Street. So that's this one right here. It's been a property long the subject of code violations, of a hotspot for crime and calls and complaints to the city. It is a historic property. And so recognizing that the 377 Appleton Street property, while large, may be harder to develop from an internal space square footage standpoint, there may be a developer who would actually bundle, may want to bundle some of these for historic tax credits and other resources to make it one larger development. So that felt like an adequate opportunity to pursue and put it on the plan. One which may be a little bit unconventional, but we felt there was little to lose by not putting it there, was the Lawrence School. And obviously the HRA would not acquire a property from the city itself while it's being used. I mean, it couldn't. But the idea here is, should the city and the public schools is undergoing has had conversations of significant transformations, whether it's middle schools or consolidations or what have you. At some point, there have been lists of what property would then become surplus, and in those conversations, Lawrence School has been on that short list. I personally have no idea what is in the future in the cards for other public schools. What I do know from a development standpoint is that if it ever did become surplus, it would be smart to have for the redevelopment authority to be ready to start marketing the property. Probably for housing would be the most ideal reuse there, being right in front of a park, and there could also be parking in the back as an amenity. So it could be an attractive property. And this is just about like cutting lead time should something like that happen. A few others here on this slide. 299 and 307 Walnut Street. Since the passage of the plan, they have become city property. They're abutting the uh, the the armory, the Holyoke Armory. So it could play a part with that project's development, or they could frankly just be standalone houses, a duplex or two single-family homes. There's enough space for that there. It's right across the street from a housing authority property. 243 Elm Street is an auto dealership. It is across from that large block that's vacant and where the housing authority has secured site control. This is what one within the theme of trying to put properties there that have a use that is different from the character of that neighborhood. So the HRA could work with the owner of that who actually does develop properties and at some point even looked at doing a mixed use, commercial and housing project, which would be very much aligned with what we're trying to do here. I think the last one is 136 Suffolk Street. It is an underutilized small building facing Suffolk, which is on the back of that parking lot that goes with the church at 377 Appleton. And the HRA board and staff felt like that would be a good opportunity to aggregate with the rest of potential development there. Moving along on Area 4. So Area 4 used to be more like Northern High Street and Lemon Terrace, and one of the changes here, it's been redefined further down, kind of like the middle portion of High Street, where we're seeing more of the boarded up buildings, but also including some of the micro neighborhood around I think Worcester Street or Worcester Court, where some new investment has happened there. And also it includes the area where the old Essex Hotel was taken down. So additions for this area, there's several parcels, but in reality, several of them are just joined in sites. For example, on the top left, you see the Haberman Hardware site. Those are, I think, 3 parcels. The rest of that face of the block is already on the urban renewal plan. So since the original plan here in Hardware shut down, it is very likely that the attractive thing would be identifying a developer for that entire block facing High Street. That includes the HAPCO building and this building as well, along with some of the vacant properties that are on that side of High Street. Across from Haberman and the HAPCO building, there's a municipal parking lot that frankly has seen better days. It is scarcely used. It is used, but not nearly to, I would say, not even to its capacity. And could be an attractive amenity to a large development like the one that we're describing across the street. So it would allow for continued action by the city and the HRA to potentially transfer that to the HRA as part of a larger development package. To the top right, 16 Commercial Street. It is an industrial type building. It has suffered significant decay. And to be frank, we're not sure to what extent it's still worth saving from an investor standpoint. Purely, we haven't been through the building, but it is zoned industrial. It is off the railway. We're seeing the tendency with industrial real estate in the downtown becoming scarcer because of the opportunity that legalized cannabis has offered Holyoke as one of the leaders in the state with licenses. So this could potentially go for something like that, or should it become a demolition project at some point, it would be one of the bigger tracts of industrial land in the downtown for development. Then there are a couple of vacant lots under different ownership on Worcester Place, where we're aggregating those for housing development that um, would complement some of the new investment in existing buildings. Would be a good idea. Um, 399, 405, and 415 High Street are three vacant lots right here. They're about across the street from Old San Juan Bakery. They have three different owners. Ideally, they're aggregated for a new building, a new development facing High Street. It is a commercial corridor, pedestrian corridor, and so that's where you really want to have your activity facing. Um, the properties that are on the bottom of the slide, 394 and 400 High Street, as well as the vacant lots on Newton Street, present an opportunity to put parking in the back of the buildings that are facing High Street. The businesses on High Street often complain that there's not enough parking to increase their volume of business. And so certainly if you compare Center City Holyoke and the parking that we have, off-street parking in particular, with the off-street parking in Northampton, we have a fraction of that. And there's a reason why they have a lot more restaurants, for example. But the point of that corollary is, businesses will need parking, but just leaving it to each business to fend for themselves with these small lots will not only lead to it being more expensive for businesses, but also lead to inefficient utilization of land. Right, folks will put parking lots on the main pedestrian corridor, which isn't attractive, um, and it's just not the optimal place to put it. So putting parking on the back of the businesses is the ideal. 588 High Street is right across, or right next to the fire station. The city has tried to sell it in the past and actually did auction it, but nothing was happening with ownership. So we had to, actually, I'm not sure if we ever closed on it after it was auctioned off. In any case, we own it now, as I understand it. And it's just in really tough shape. So this is likely going to be at some point soon a demolition project. And at that point, it's just putting it on the plan allows the city to consider, if not a sale directly through the city, it can be transferred to the HRA for a project that complements the corridor. And I believe there's also an order later in the DGR meeting about High Street. So that part in Area 4, I'll probably reference it again when we're talking about that towards the end of the meeting. Area 5 has seen some of the most amount of activity over the last 8 years. It's seen the Canal Walk Phase 2 development. It's seen the new passenger rail station, and it's seen additional investment and tenancy along that Canal Walk. Gateway City Arts opened. They created a new restaurant in Gateway City Arts Bistro, and a secondary restaurant that opened, I want to say maybe a month or a couple of months before the pandemic hit. It also saw the Cubit building being bought and redeveloped with the assistance of the Redevelopment Authority and the city. And it will soon see the redevelopment of the Armor and Company building, which we commonly call the Triangle Building because it looks like a triangle, and the investment in Canal Row as part of that project, kind of completing out that block. Hotel Jess has also been acquired, and there is a project that is being set up there, and that was done with the assistance of Mass Development as well. So properties to be added here within the area. We have to the top left is actually Sullivan Scrap. There is no immediate intent to actually acquire that. It is a somewhat of a defensive move for the city. The concern is it is really site constraint. And the concern is that over time, operational and economic pressures would actually make solvent scrap maybe even expand. Not being able to expand on site, it hypothetically, they could find greener pastures that isn't Holyoke. And in that case, we may be looking at a property that could be reused. And so that's why it's included in the plan, to see how it could complement the area and the neighborhood. The Richardson train station at the top right was initially included in the plan as a partnership with Holyoke Gas and Electric. And a note on a partnership, it actually realized, or DHCD changed its policy one way or the other, that listing something as a partnership doesn't actually mean anything regulatorily or the state. So it doesn't really allow for the HRA to do much. In any case, it's been sold privately, which is good news. If anyone has passed by the property, they're already doing maintenance to the roof, which is critical. Very important work, and I think that we're all happy to see. The reason why it's added is it's similar to some of the historic properties in Churchill. It's owner agnostic. It's just a significant piece of Holyoke history that should something happen with ownership, that it can't complete a project, or it needs help identifying investors, that the HRA is there and can play a role. On the bottom left, 161 Main Street is actually the only property that of the entire block that is not in the plan for development. So we understood it to be best to just include the entire block there, which could potentially leverage more development, as it's been kind of like the epicenter of new development in the downtown. And then on the bottom right, 31 Canal Street is further removed from these properties, but there's been in recent years an interest from residents around to secure more off-site parking. There's dense housing there, and on-street parking becomes scarce, particularly in the winter months when there are parking bans. That property seems to be significantly underutilized. There doesn't seem to be most of the time an operating business there. So integrating it to the neighborhood would be the goal. We're more than halfway there. There are 10 areas, but 2 of them don't have amendments. So bear with me a few more minutes. Area 6 was centered around the Mass Green Performance Computing Center. 2 of the notable projects there has been 216 Appleton Street, which through the city, we got grants to do valued over $300,000, taking out lead and asbestos from the building. Through the Redevelopment Authority, identifying Wind Development, the biggest housing developer in the state. So that's under contract. And as of actually this week, we have secured, Ben, correct me if I'm wrong, 2.4 million, 2.7 million dollars, $2.6 million in historic tax credits. We're regularly getting funded $300,000 around, and there are 3 rounds a year. So we fully expect by the year to have $2.9 million in historic tax credits. The goal is 4. So by the end of the year, we'll be about 3/4 of the way there. Wind will then be applying this winter for low-income housing tax credits. Half the project is projected to be affordable housing, the other half to be unrestricted or market rate housing, about 100 units or a little bit more, 102 or 3. The other one is what's called the Steam Building, kind of a play off of one of its old signs. At least before the pandemic, I can't speak to recently, but it was about 3/4 of the way leased, a building that was empty, and the redevelopment partnered with the owner to decide aggregate and which has allowed them to provide green spaces and as well as parking. A few additions here. The site at 195 Appleton Street, it remains probably the largest mill at the heart of the Canal District. That while there's been a lot of interest to acquire it, ownership has been less ready to sell it. We do believe, or we understand from DP, there may also be an environmental situation there that may need public interference. Hopefully not. Um, uh, but the property has been subject of kind of speculative pricing that has driven off any interest to the detriment to the city of Holyoke. There's a small vacant parcel on 260 Street. The importance of it is the next phase of the canal walk will go right in front of that property. So it could be anything from housing to be aggregated with one of the next door commercial opportunities. And then there are two parcels, 277 and 285 Main Street. I think they may be on the agenda for tonight to declare surplus. I don't quite remember. We have a few of them. The importance of those is that as they've been, former buildings that were demolished, now vacant property, they're not really apt for new development. If we were in Cambridge, there would be a developer that would want to develop every square foot available in the city. But the cost of doing dense development so constrained with space would far outstrip the value in a weaker real estate market in Western Massachusetts and Holyoke in particular. So our sense is that the biggest value of these lots are to use it as leverage to get a good development or good rehabilitation of the two buildings that are right next to it, which stand right now empty and boarded up. Those are the two buildings that I'm highlighting here with my mouse. Area 7, as I said, no additions here. Area 7 was the only one that was one property because it was a former Parsons Paper mill that burned down in 2008. And by 2016, we embarked on a substantial cleanup project, just over $3.6 million. Cleanup and demolition. One of the buildings was able to be saved, a 40,000 square foot building. It's been used for the expansion of Aegis Energy Services. It actually became a bigger project than they anticipated. And after a merger with a large French multinational, they have completed the work this year. And already, if they don't have a certificate of occupancy already, they will within a matter of so that project, which features the cleanup and a solar field, is also a 200% expansion of square footage for that. Funny enough, was the genesis of this entire exercise to amend the plan. As the council is familiar, the area around Carlos Vega Park was identified in the original plan for a substantial housing project that could emphasize affordable homeownership. Over 90% of the housing stock in South Holyoke is rental. And so when we think about neighborhood stabilization, providing avenues for people to own their home provides ladders of socioeconomic opportunity for folks to, when they inevitably want to go from rental to ownership situation, they can stay in their community and continue to build and strengthen the neighborhood that is there. Most of the land around Carlos Vega Park is already in the plan. Most of it already has control, but there are some exceptions to that. So those exceptions are the ones that we're adding. I should also say we secured the largest MassWorks grant in the state just late last year, about $6.5 million to do the public works portion of the project. So the streets and the utilities, the sidewalks, that would complement a new housing project. Same as before, dark gray has been projects that, or properties that were on the renewal plan before. The dark orange are the new ones. I should also mention Valley Arena Park was also on the plan. It was something that was done primarily through the city but having it in our urban renewal plan allowed us to secure through the state to clean it up.
Hi, how you doing?
There's a significant portion of kind of like half of a block that's owned by Holyoke Machine Company and a second company. I'm blanking on the name right now, but it's half a block that's been used. When it's been used for storage on site, just out in the open. As most of you probably know, Holyoke Machine has ceased its operations a year or two ago. And so it's no longer needed for the operations of the building. Those properties originally were listed as a potential partnership with them, which again doesn't mean anything to DHCD. We actually wanted to say, well, they're selling it, and so as a great partner, we want to buy them for this housing project. And they said, no, that doesn't mean anything. We want to buy it to complement the South Holyoke project, then you have to list it that way. And so that's what we're doing here. We're listing it to complement the South Holyoke housing project. 60 Hamilton Street is a parking lot owned by Trinity Church. That's being added as a municipal parking lot that faces Main Street. The idea there is that the HRA could potentially come to some agreement with the church where they need parking. This could be a situation where the HRA could provide, this is where the HRA really has a bigger advantage than a municipal corporation. A municipal corporation can only sell or buy under very strict rules. The HRA can be very creative and work with not just money, but also swapping land and other considerations. So the idea here is optimizing where parking is being allocated. There's definitely more parking in that specific corner than what's needed. When we're looking for housing opportunity in Carlos Vega Park to have a transformative effect. Similarly, in 55 property that's something that complements the rest of the neighborhood. Basically, we're looking at the four corners of the park and transforming it with new development, similar in some ways to how we looked at Lyman Terrace and transforming, not just having a housing project, but having a neighborhood. 80 Hamilton Street is to the other side of Main Street. It's a very small lot. It would be really hard to develop, but when we're talking, creatively about how do we reallocate parking in that corridor, that could also play a role with constituents' desire to have some level of parking that could potentially play a role there. 603 and 607 South Bridge Street falls into this category of uses that seem out of step with the immediate neighborhood. These are actually behind the lots that are currently owned by Holyoke Machine and targeted for the housing project. So, but they're also facing Morgan School. So right between a new housing project and the neighborhood school is not ideally where you would want a concentration of auto uses. So it's included there to provide for either more compatible commercial uses or to complement more residential uses. Area 9, and this is really the last area where we're doing additions. We're currently in the midst of planning, as I said, the next phase of the canal walk. It actually do the connection through Cabot Street to the Willimantic Bridge. We've provided a bike station there as well in front of Seatown. There's been a significant demolition nearby there as well. That's been subject to a property sale through the city. And as the master plan calls for, improvement to a gateway treatment through Main Street, through Cabot Street, we're working on those as well. The Heart of Holyoke project that had a crowdfunding campaign started executing at the end of last year, and work is ongoing. So a few parcels to add right across from Seatown. There is a quite sizable property that's just overgrown. That could be a housing development on its own, or a commercial development, because it's a mixed corridor. It could be mixed. It could be mixed use, or it could even be cut up to do both, or aggregate part with housing and do commercial or mixed use fronting Cabot Street. Um, on South East Street, there's a couple of really tiny, small lots. One seems to have, it should have been an easement at some point, but they made it a parcel. It's like a foot wide, probably for a pipe or something like that. And the other one, small parcel that came into city ownership through tax title taking. All the properties around it seemingly are in the plan already and they're vacant. So it presents an opportunity for site aggregation and development. And on the bottom right, 28 and 32 Cabot Street, those were recently approved for sale, I believe, for new development there. But as I said, it's being consistent with the steps that we're doing now. And should a project not move forward, it's owner agnostic. It's, we of course want to see that go forward, but then it's listed there on the plan. Should something fall through, we have a fallback. Area 10 has seen some significant interest and investment, particularly in the cannabis in the cannabis industry. 37 Appleton has been demolished. That was one of the parcels identified in the plan, transferred to the redevelopment authority, and done an agreement with American Environmental. An expansion project from them is pending there. 28 Appleton, I think, is the address. In any case, across the street from 37 Appleton is Rise or Guy, which has the city's at this point the only large manufacturer of cannabis. Soon others to join them, and a few other properties that the council's aware of in this area where special permits have been secured. So at this point, there are no amendments being proposed to that area. I think that's it as far as the presentation. I'll just stop here. Any questions, or if the board wants to add or answer any questions.
Yeah, I have a question, Mr. Chairman Bartley.
Councilor Graney is recognized.
Yeah, Marcos, these plans they look wonderful. Everything's great. A lot of us seniors in the city have been waiting with bated breath for the Victory Theater to open for 25, 30 years. I was wondering, do you have any plans at all, or does the city have any plans at all for senior housing in the western sectors of the city at all? A lot of the seniors always inquire to me, is there any plan for us seniors who make up a considerable segment of the population in Holyoke would love to get some housing for the seniors. Most surrounding communities certainly have this type of housing for their seniors, and I was just wondering if the city has any plans for that. Thank you.
Marcos, why don't we just, I think it sounds like there are two parts there. One, if you have an update on the Victory, let's do that in 60 seconds or less, and then the main event sounds like the senior housing.
Yep. I don't have the latest and greatest on the Victory.
You say this is a democratic type of thing, and you gotta leave. You're pointing me. You people are making.
Okay, so hold on, Mr. Allen. Mr. Allen, would you turn your mic on, please? Ryan, going once.
Hey, Dave, I'm right here. What's going on?
Thank you. All right. Okay, so that's all right. Just kind of hang tight for the next little bit. Can you just mute everybody, Ryan? I don't know what that was, and I heard a little bit of it during Mr. Merrill's presentation, a little this and that. I know it's nobody on here is doing it intentionally, but just mute everybody except
I'll mute everybody, and then I'll unmute Marcos, okay?
You just mute everybody. Well, don't do it to me because I got to kind of run the meeting. But just do it and leave Mr. Morero on, and then we'll proceed accordingly. But just kind of hang tight, would you, please? Marcos, proceed.
Trying to redo my steps. So on the Victory Theater. Am I unmuted? Okay.
Okay, so Marcos, yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so on the Victory Theater, I don't have the latest and greatest since the pandemic. It's my understanding that they're still fundraising for the theater. Privately they have I would say not privately, that they have a goal of private fundraising somewhere around $7 million. They have done some significant headway into that. Prior to the pandemic, they had a good lead on state monies from a bond bill, or actually two bond bills, one for 11 million and one for 2 million. I don't, further than that, I don't have any additional information on their funding. On the
Very nice. And then senior housing.
On the senior housing, it's a great question, and so I've actually approached the Donahue Institute because they're doing a regional housing study, and I've approached them on the possibility of having either a chapter of that study or a spin-off from that study where we could potentially pay into to have a broader analysis of needs in terms of senior housing. This actually came up, I think maybe it was last summer, in some of the comments of the CPA. So I've started those conversations with the Donahue Institute. I don't have a scope of work written yet, but it's something I definitely want to get to. I have heard that desire in the community.
Okay, I'm going to ask Howie if he's satisfied, but just from my take on Councilor Graney's questions, Marco said, your convenience, would you circle back to Mr. Sanders or Don Sanders or Saunders? Why am I blanking his name? Would you circle back to Mr. Saunders and just on the Victory Theater and perhaps send a communication to Councilor Graney and myself relative to that? And then relative to Councilor Graney's question about the senior housing, when you have more intel from the Donahue Institute, perhaps you could contact Councilor Graney and myself as well with an update. And Councilor Graney does have an email now, Marcos, and if you don't have that, I can provide it. Okay. All right. And then I see Councilor McGivern's hand up, but I just want to. So Marcos, are there any? Because I can't see the screen now. I can see a list. Are there any other department heads here, Marcos, that are supposed to participate?
Would you like me to stop sharing the screen?
Just for a minute, would you please?
Sure.
And you might have to toggle back and forth. I don't know what the best way is, Marcos, but I think every counselor already received that. I know I did. I received that presentation prior, and so I had it. But I don't see any other department heads here. So with that, Councilor McGivern's recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Marcos, thank you for a presentation to all the Redevelopment Authority members and to everyone who was present tonight. We appreciate the work you've been doing. I know it's been a lot of hard work. Marcos, I noticed with some participants who are here this evening that they are currently associated with some of the properties that are being part of this major change. So I'm guessing that all property owners were notified of this public meeting.
Yes, correct. So as we did with the first plan, we want to give people a heads up. Number one, that the property was being added to the plan. That's not any regulatory requirement, but we just felt that it's an appropriate thing to do. So everyone that owns property that's been identified to be added to the plan was sent a letter from us. We followed up by calling, I want to say most people. I can't guarantee that we called everybody, just to follow up, just to make sure that folks are understanding what it means. Because we've then had follow-up conversations where folks say, wait, are you buying my property? Some say, this is my price. Some say, don't add it. And the answer is the same. This is not an offer to buy the property. We're not immediately buying anything. Actually, the ones we're immediately looking to buy are in South Holyoke. the Holyoke Machine properties. Those are the ones that we're really immediately looking to acquire, and the owner knows that. We've been having conversations, and anything else is not really subject to any immediate action in this year, and maybe not even next year. So yeah, everyone was notified, and not just told of the action of the plan, but also told of this meeting, which is, how they got the information.
Okay, Councilor McGivern.
I've got a series of questions. I just wanted to open up with that to make sure we're on the same page.
Okay.
Because the original plan, correct me if I'm wrong, or I might not be phrasing it 100% correctly, but most of the property in the original plan, as it was developed, did not have ownership other than the city, was vacant lots. And this is a major change, I guess that's what it's being called, by adding a lot of property that has current owners, some occupied.
Yeah. So the title of the presentation is major plan change because that's statutorily what DHCD calls it. I don't have a breakdown of how many properties in the original plan were privately owned. I remember that over 90% of it was vacant, and so it may have been vacant privately owned. A lot of it certainly was vacant city owned as well.
Okay. So
yes, you are right.
You agree that that's the way I'm reading this, is we're adding a lot of property that has ownership, and some of that ownership is occupied in business or in residential, is also occupied and taking place.
Yes,
so I'm concerned because once we turn this property over to the redevelopment authority, the mayor and the city council no longer has a say in acquiring the property. Am I correct?
It does not require further authorization from the mayor or the city council.
Correct. So if there's something that's controversial, the redevelopment authority can go ahead and take property. Of course, you have to have the assets to take it, but you can do that.
You have to have the assets to take it and properly compensate, which is, as we've discussed before in the context of, I think, the rail station, it's not always only about the real estate price. Particularly if it's occupied to unoccupied, then you have to deal with moving the tenants, and all those things are remarkably sensitive, and actually nothing that the redevelopment authority has practiced over the last years. I'll go even further. The housing authority is normally imbued with eminent domain authority to do housing projects. It doesn't need city approval for that, and even they haven't ever exercised the eminent domain powers because, particularly nowadays, that wasn't always true, unfortunately. But there is a lot of oversight and legal protections for owners and tenants. So the incentive is always for the redevelopment authority to come to terms with anyone. Number one. And number two, adding property to the list really bolsters, and I can't underscore this enough, it really bolsters the ability for the HRA to be a partner and the city to be a partner in securing financing, right? If we can clearly point out to this is the public's desire to rehabilitate in a certain way, most times it's most convenient and most expeditious for the private sector to get it done because we don't have those assets, also because it requires capacity to do a lot of projects at the same time, and we're resource or capacity constrained.
Let me share a couple of my concerns more specific. Area 2, 174 Lyman Street and adjacent lots. Is the lot that you're asking to acquire the current parking lot for Fancy's Tavern?
I'm just looking for it right here. 1 second.
Marcus, you want to put it up on? You want to put area 2 up on the split screen just so we can.
Sure.
Councilor McGivern, are you going to have a series of questions relative to?
There's a series of examples. I think my question or my concern has been expressed, but in every area I cite, and I don't think it's necessary right now. I'd like to hear more from property owners and more from other people. But I just want to highlight a couple to show where my concern is coming from before we get into a more deeper discussion. But of course, Mr. Bartley, it is a public hearing. I don't want to take up too much time at this point. But if I could get this one
Mr.
question.
Bartley, it's just Mr. Chairman's fine, or Dave,
Okay, Counselor.
or Counselor. Okay, Marcos, so let's just go sort of, because we got a long agenda. So Marcos, what 174 alignment? What that's our question mark. What is the current use of it?
Right now, it's an empty thing. It's not being used.
But what's the adjacent lot?
The adjacent lot is just it's a parking lot up for whoever's renting it. It's across from Francie's, but it's not under the same ownership.
Okay, yeah, that looks like they're a lot that they use in their parking. Councilor McGivern.
That answers my question, and the rest of my concerns are similar, which I'll hold off on for now, so we can continue with the public hearing.
Okay, I see Councilor Sullivan's hand up. Councilor Sullivan's recognized. And then take your hand down when you're done, please.
Yeah, my questions kind of go along the same line as Councilor McGivern. Let's just start with the title on this paper we've been given. It says acquired for the urban renewal plan, but the description being given to us is these are being additions to the plan. Why is this stated as be proposed to be acquired?
Marcos, you want to answer that for Councilor Sullivan?
I'm not seeing where you're seeing one or the other. We may be using it interchangeably. You add properties to the plan. One of the things that allows is it imbues the HRA with the ability to acquire property. So adding it to the plan allows the HRA to buy it.
Okay, so it says urban renewal plan amendment, private properties proposed to be acquired for the urban renewal plan.
Because that would be the document we would have to submit to DHCD as part of the amendment. And that's the language that they use. That doesn't mean that we're immediately acquiring them.
Okay, which circles us back to the question about the assets to do that. And we've asked for several years now where we stand with the proposal to bring HEDIC and HRA together as one cohesive unit, since one is sitting on several $1 million in cash and the other is dead broke. Why haven't we done this yet?
It's a complex legal maneuver that we haven't been able to disentangle. That's why.
But haven't we also spent money on a consultant to put these together?
Put what together?
The two groups together, the HRA and HEDIC.
No, we secured technical assistance from the state to do an assessment of the HEDIC loan program most recently.
I've been hearing how complex an issue this is, though, since I got 5 years ago on the council. We've had mergers of major airlines since then.
Okay, so Mike, let me just sort of, let's just step back here. So I don't want to get too far off with the HEDIC HRA deal, but I see your question about here. So that's the second document you provided. Private property is proposed to be acquired. Yeah. So if you look at 760 CMR 1203, I think that's the requirement that's within that CMR, and these are the lists. But so Mike, is there a specific question within that list, or are you trying to make it a broader question about HEDIC and HRA at this point? I'm just not clear on that.
Well, we're adding. I don't know. The proposal in front of us, as I'm hearing it, is to add all of these properties to the plan.
That's right.
What in writing is given us says to be acquired. All right. And it goes back to what Councilor McGivern says, and then it becomes part of HRA, after which we lose all control of whatever happens with these. All right. And we've seen this happen several times. And it gives me other concerns just about even adding anything to what is in HRA's portfolio. I just listened about 216 Appleton Street and Wind Development, $2.5 to $4 million in tax credits. That's barely going to put a roof on the place. That place is falling down. All right. And we've been waiting and waiting and waiting. That's nowhere near enough. And HRA doesn't have the resources to pull any of this off themselves either. And
Okay,
we're going to add, we're going to add to the list. I just don't get it.
I hear you. So, so Marcus, let me just give me a little broader overview. In general, answer two questions for us, please. The loss of control issue relative. So explain that in a little more basic language, and then I really haven't heard the features and benefits to the. Although you gave something about maybe accessing funds for them, but the features and benefits to the private property owners. Could you just sort of briefly touch on those two points for me, please?
Okay, so wait, the first, I should have put it down. So the second one was the benefits of the property owner.
Yeah,
and
the
second
features.
one
So
was
just the loss of control. Do one at a time. So the loss of control issue. Just enlighten us on there. Enlighten me on it anyhow. What's exactly happening here?
I guess it depends on what you see as control, and what is the control that the city has or needs.
Tell us the way you see
and I
it.
say that now. It's the urban renewal plan is an expression, first of all, of what the city wants to see happen, and there are actions that can be delegated onto the HRA. And so, you know, if the city has a problem with actions being delegated to the HRA, well, then certainly that's the city's call. The HRA makes a proposal, and it's up to the mayor and the city council to approve that the HRA can be delegated certain things. Just because something is added onto the plan doesn't mean that the HRA is going to go out and buy it, even if it had the resources. You know, there are examples where the housing authority has the resources and it has the authority to do eminent domain takings, but it doesn't do it. And similarly, the HRA has had the resources and the authority to do eminent domain over the last 8 years and hasn't. The HRA board has practiced restraint because it understands that the way of doing development, not merely about bricks and mortar, it's about bringing a community together, is important to have. Excuse me. It's important to have a community that's not being torn apart by eminent domain. There are rare exceptions where eminent domain has to be exercised, where someone is doing speculation with the land, for example, if you're a holdout, something like that. There are situations where it could also be beneficial to the property owner if you're, for example, trying to clear title, if you have fractured ownership or ownership that doesn't agree with each other, where you can have a domain and clear title to an interested buyer. Some of these properties are within an opportunity zone, for example, and so opportunity zone projects are time sensitive. And you have to identify and secure a project within 180 days. And so if you don't have a mechanism to respond quickly, you can't do something there. And the opportunity zone requires majority ownership by someone external. So that could be a benefit to a property owner. Most of the time, and I don't want to speak for the board, but this expression has been said before in the meetings. It's wonderful when the property owner itself either wants to sell or do the project themselves because it allows for the plan to go. But the plan itself is an expression of what the city wants to do. It's openly available and transparent. A lot of developers come to us and say, what does the city want to see? I can't pick winners and tell them, you should invest in this and that. I'm not giving you investment advice, but I can transparently provide a plan that says, these are high priority things that the city wants to see, and you can either connect with the property owners, or we can figure out a way of putting financing together on something in conjunction with the property owner.
Okay, Marcos, just go back to the regular without the shared screen, if you would, please.
All right, sure.
Thank you. You might have to bounce back and forth. I'm sorry for that. Okay. Are there any other counselors that want to raised their hands. I don't, let me just say, now let me, I think I saw, I think I saw Councilor Leahy on here, but I don't see his hand on here, a hand up. So, okay. Councilor Murphy has his hand up. Councilor Murphy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So just a few questions so I make sure I understand this. And there are parts here I'm very happy to see that we are looking to purchase them because obviously they would help with the South Holyoke project. But along with the concerns that have been expressed, I mean, am I correct that if we approve, we have to approve either all of this, or can we dissect some of the parcels that we feel should not be part of this?
Marcos?
What I would say is that we're within a process. This isn't a take it or leave it kind of situation. The process is that the redevelopment authority provides a proposal that needs approval by both the mayor and the city council. And so if there are significant concerns, this is why we run the public hearing, and the HRA can take that in advisement. And if they feel like those concerns outweigh the public goals and benefit, the HRA board can make amendments to it.
So if we had, if I'm hearing you correctly, Marcos, if we had concerns on various parcels, or we felt like certain areas we should not be doing as aggressively, we would send that back to the HRA. They would potentially reconsider and come back to us with a plan that maybe have taken some of those properties out, or provide additional information regarding what might happen with those properties.
Any of that can happen, can still happen. There's nothing written in stone. Let me put it that way. There's no process that can't go back and be worked on.
And the last question, Marcos, I mean, assuming there's not a specific time frame on when this has to be approved. I mean, obviously we got it. I know I read it this week, but there's a lot of properties being added there. And I try to go through my ward, but I try to go through everything. Hasn't happened. So to be in that position to get a chance to see it, I mean, is there a time frame when you would really encourage that we have a final decision on this?
Yeah, tonight. No, I'm kidding.
Well, for you, then it's no. No, do you have a time frame?
The driver of the time frame is really Area 8, the properties around Carlos Vega Park, and in particular the Holyoke machine lots. We are, and I don't want to say we have an agreement, but we're near an agreement, and so I don't want to take that for granted. It would be great if we could have a near-term approval. We would love to close on an acquisition there by the end of this year.
Yeah. So last thing, Mr. Chairman, if I may. So I mean, I'm certainly in agreement with much of what we're talking about in South Holyoke, the parking lot situation, the church, the lot on Race and Hamilton Street, certainly the Holyoke machine properties, which would be part of phase 3, I believe, of the housing project. So with that looking more positive, at least from my venue, and I know there are those vacant lots on Southeast Street certainly do not enhance the neighborhood as it is. I mean, if all the other concerns were there in the other areas, and the council felt comfortable with the South Holyoke portion, if they sent that back as something we could approve to start with, and then come back and work on the other part as if needs to be dissected, would that work? Or could that work?
We may have to do the process all over again. So I don't know. The short version of the answer is I don't know.
Okay.
My may have to do the process all over again for the other ones. But I mean, I'm not being facetious. We don't need it next week. I mean, soon is something that we want. We can close by the end of the year. Certainly, if the council wants to continue the hearing, I think that's fine. Okay. And we can certainly, number one, provide more information on a follow-up. Number two, and we kind of expected this to have feedback. That was a normal part of the process last time around. Kind of with the pandemic, it was harder to run more public meetings, but we had several public meetings last time around. The HRA considered the public feedback and made edits. But yeah, certainly, the HRA would consider any feedback. My personal preference, and not that this would mean anything, would be if we could get the feedback and have some sort of consensus. That would be more efficient use of our time.
Okay.
But
I know I can give consensus for the South Holyoke parts because I've gone over them with you many times, and obviously, have advocated. But I do have similar concerns to Councilor McGivern and Councilor Sullivan that there's a lot of parcels here that we may or may not want to be including in this. So, but I do appreciate the information, and I thought, again, it was a well documented and in depth 32 pages. So, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you. I don't see any other councilors with their hands up now. I don't see the chairman of the HRA board. I see his name on there, but I don't see him. So I assume he's here somewhere. Is there? There's the chairman. The HRA does. Mr. Chairman, does any member of the? Do you want to recognize one particular member of the HRA board who may in fact want to speak on this now for a ever so brief period?
I think Mr. Creed might want to say something, or Mr. Eager might want to say something. Mrs. Duffy too, I think.
Mr. Creed.
Chairman Bartley, thank you. And I will be ever so brief. First of all, I certainly want to thank Marcos and the staff at OEPD who just did a tremendous amount of work, not only on this presentation, but the last 8 years. This is really the first significant change to the plan that we're proposing. I'm particularly excited, obviously, by what's happening in South Holyoke, and I think that the changes to the plan relating to South Holyoke are indicative of what we're trying to do throughout the entire plan, which is to make sure that we are including parts of neighborhoods that will support the goals and objectives of the plan that maybe we didn't necessarily understand 8 years ago. So I think that's the intent, and I think there's rationale for each one of these parcels. We obviously have not heard from the public yet, and if there's an opportunity for members of the board to have conversations with any members of the council regarding any one of these parcels, we'd certainly be happy to do that. And I appreciate the opportunity that we've got to present it publicly tonight.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, thank you, Ms. Creed. Mr. Chairman, did you, who'd you list second?
I think Carl.
Mr. Rieger?
There we go. Can you hear me?
Okay. Yes.
Gentlemen, councilors, ladies, you're looking at a plan that's the largest in the state. And this is in excess of 10 years. It's been very transparent. In the initial stages, we had many, many hearings, and some of you were participants throughout. To this date, you've all been participants. And to the degree that you have concerns, particularly Terry, I know, has been very, very active when we were dealing with the South Holyoke area. It's been a kind of a mutual understanding. I think we're abusing the term control or perceiving it as this versus that. It's not a control factor. It's we're all in it together. We're all working together, and the door is always open. When you're dealing with sensitivity issues, not unlike certain land takings that we are involved in, you have to be kind of bluntly honest about the reality. You want people, to be starting at 1 million, when in reality, it's maybe only $40,000. So there's a certain amount of discretion and proprietariness that has to be included. It has nothing to do with control. It has to do with making maximum dollar benefit, and especially on the taxpayers' rolls, minimum cost. Maximizing for the private investment for the tax dollar return. And that's really what the nub of it is. I appreciate that we're having an opportunity to be able to present it to you all. It's been a major undertaking, to say the least. Witness a lot of the additional land building situations that we're entertaining. And it's because we need to control the area. That's the only way that you're going to have, for lack of a better way of saying it, a positive mitigation, so that you don't have one property owner or one piece of property that's just totally negative, because it's going to draw down everything else. So to the degree that the word is control, yes, it's essential that we're able to do that. But that's for the positive side. I could digress further, but thank you for allowing us to be able to make our presentment to you.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, one more.
Oh, hi. I'm not sure if Mrs. Duffy wants to say anything, Pat, or Gladys too.
Thank you. I'll be really brief. I think that Tom and Carl covered most of the ground. It's really great to be here. I guess I would just say that the Redevelopment Authority is a tool for the whole city. And remember that we try to only enter when the private market isn't working in the best favor of the city. But this is such an important part of this process, getting feedback. This is just the beginning. We all feel really good about the plan we put together, but now this is a public hearing, and let's get feedback and work with you. So thank you. Thanks very much. Thanks for letting me speak.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. Chairman, I think we're good, because Councilor Martinez that hasn't raised her hand yet, and we've gone through that a couple of times with Councilor. So we're gonna, Gladys, did you need to jump in right here, Gladys? Because I asked if any councilors wanted to speak. So do you need to speak now?
I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm sorry. I had to step up for a minute. Moved over for a minute.
Go ahead.
I just want to say that thank you again, Marcus, for the presentation. I joined the HRA about 8 years or 10 years ago, when the first round of sites were presented, and as you can see, many projects have developed from this particular work that they've been doing, and you can see the differences in certain areas of the city already with this urban development. And also recalling, 15, 20 years ago, when the last urban redevelopment was presented while I was working on Nueva Esperanza, and happy to see that Sao Julio finally is in the list to be taking care of a lot of the neighborhoods. So thank you again for at least being part of this process, and we would be considering any feedbacks. Thank you.
Okay, we are in a public hearing, so I really don't like the Zoom meeting for the public hearing, because it's just not very simple. Mr. Allen, you're still with us?
Yes, I am, Dave.
Okay, so Ryan, we've got several members of the public here. How is it that you want to advise me on how to proceed? Do they raise their hands like we do with the raise hand feature, or what do we do here?
I think that would be a good way to start. We do have several people on phone, on phone call. We could ask people who are here, who are on the computer, to put a blue hand up if they can, to be heard, and then maybe go to the telephone people. Totally at your discretion. But I'm prepared to unmute anybody who might want to participate in public comment.
Okay, so why don't we do it that way? We're going to do it with the people I can see on the screen first. They can, if you're on the screen, you can raise your hand. Now we're going to have an ever so brief ground rule discussion. It's the same ground rule I give every one of these, and I've done more than one. Okay, so we're not going to make a long speech, because those are reserved for the politicians. You don't get to make a long speech. So before you raise your hand, gather your thoughts, make your points, write them down on paper, hit the highlights, and you only direct your questions to the chair. You do not ask Councilor McGivern or Mr. Eager or Mr. Marrero. You just direct your comments directly to the chair. We're all here. We can all hear. We can all take notes. And on top of that, it's recorded for our future viewing pleasure if we want to do that. When I say gather your thoughts, I mean 2 minutes. I don't mean 18 minutes. This is not the ordinance committee. So this is DGR. So you're gonna get 2 minutes. I'm not gonna be, I don't have a stopwatch, but it's gonna be, ballpark 2 minutes. And after that, Mr. Allen, who is still with us, is gonna cut the mic. So, because I don't have that power, but Mr. Allen, you're gonna give them 2 minutes. When I say, if I see them going well beyond their time frame, Mr. Allen will just cut the mic. Okay. So with that, those ground rules being said, I don't see anyone with their hand up at all who's on the screen. So we're gonna have an auction here and going once, going twice. So if anyone wants to raise their hand who's on the screen,
I don't know how to raise the hand.
Oh, okay, well all right. So we did that to start the meeting. So I said I can't take that, but that's okay. If there's a little feature at the bottom where if you hit the word participants, and then a screen opens up on the right, and then at the bottom of that screen it says raise your hand. So for example, it says raise hand. So you see me where I raise my hand. Then when you're done with that, it says lower the hand. That's your tutorial. Okay, Mr. White, David White, very familiar with David White. Mr. Owen, I see that as well, but I'm going to recognize David White for right now. Mr. White, you have the floor. Name and address, please.
David White, I live in South Hadley at 27 Hadley Street. I have several buildings in Holyoke. Most recently, I acquired the train station. I acquired it because I listened to people for years saying somebody should do something with the train station. We acquired it. We started a major renovation of the building, preserving the train station and things the way H.H. Richardson would want. My concern is that the involvement of any government agency and the effect it could have on an individual private company financing the ongoing needs that are going to be, in particular, the train station. So that's my concern, and I'm just here to listen and see what I can find out.
Okay, that's a fair point. So Mr. Marrero is taking notes on that. We're not going to ask Mr. Marrero to respond right now, but that's so government agencies. Okay, thank you, Mr. White. If you just lower your hand, thank you for that. Mr. Owen, I see your hand up, but I don't see you.
Yes, I don't know how to operate this stuff.
Okay, well, Mr. Owen, I can hear you well. Mr. Owen, you heard the ground rules, so name and address and fire away.
Edward Owen, owner of 120 Front Street. And my concern is similar to Mr. White's concern. And as a property owner, I have maintained my property. As you can see, if you go by my property is not caving in. It's not falling apart. It's well maintained inside and out. And I don't believe that my building should be on this list. And I already spoke with Tom and Marcos, who were kind enough to meet with me. And I appreciate that. And I told them my concerns also. Now, I'm not going to take up any more time, so you don't have to mute me, but that's my concern.
Well, I'll tell you, you're following my directions. I'll tell you. See how we can do this? Okay, thank you, Mr. Owen. If you just lower your hand, that'd be great.
How do I lower it? Oh, lower hand. I got it. Wait a minute.
Thank you, Mr. Owen. I appreciate you, and thank you as well, Mr. White. Obviously, we appreciate you. Now, let's see here. Mr. Allen, Ryan, anyone from the phone force calling? Or anyone else on the screen with their, I don't see anybody else with their hands up, that's for sure. Well, Mr. Owen, just lower your hand if you have a minute, Mr. Owen, okay?
All right, I just want to ask you if I can get minutes for this meeting, the minutes for this meeting.
Yes, it'll be available, Mr. Owen.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, and on top of that, Mr. Owen, not only can you get the minutes, you can get the actual videotape. So, yeah,
awesome.
Exciting. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Owen. Mr. Allen, anybody from the telephones?
Mr. Chair, if I may, if you're on the phone, you have to hit *9 to raise your hand.
Oh, you may, Marcos. Thank you. So *9. There you go.
Thank you, Marcos.
*9. *9. Isn't this fun? Anybody? Okay, let's do it the other way. I see mainly familiar people on here, except for Mike Stickowitz. Mr. Stickowitz, are you? Did you want to speak? Are you?
Well, you know what? I'm just with I'm with Edward. I'm his tenant. He just thought it would be good for me to be in on the meeting. I own a distillery there in his property, and I just thought it would be good to be in on the meeting.
And it's good, and welcome, Mr. Stickowitz. I appreciate you. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and I would say I should add is that right now me and Edward are kind of working together. I'm like expanding and I'm moving into a new space in his location. So I know like you guys are talking about developing and like getting businesses in. We're kind of working together to like enhance the space so that it's much more attractive. You know what I mean? It's kind of the outside. We're thinking about working on the outside and everything. And I know you guys are talking about, I think maybe someone said that, you're kind of trying to compel people to like improve the properties. And I think it's just good to, let you guys know that we are working on improving the property and getting kind of like a more like business instead of it just being, I don't know if you've ever seen the property or anybody's ever seen the property, but we're kind of working on it so it'll be more attractive. You know what I'm saying?
So I do, and I appreciate you and appreciate your comments. Okay.
Yeah. Thank you guys. Thanks for taking the time to listen to me.
All right. Thank you. Mr. Ryan Allen, I don't see anybody else with their hands up, so I'm going to assume that there's nobody else who wants to make a comment at this point. Ryan, is that true?
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay. All right. So, all right. Back to so in the public hearing, I generally the way I do it, I just let anybody speak. It's normally it's pro or con, and I think from the public, I think we heard a few cons, and what I heard are particular property owners and or their tenants saying we don't want to be part of this, and they have their reasons, and their reasons are as valid as anybody else's reasons for putting them in there. So that being said, back to the committee itself, is there anyone from the DGR committee that wants to make a motion or wants to? I mean, you may, Mr. Merrill, I see your hand, but you can raise your hand too on your blue thing. You don't have to wave your hand at me. So but before I recognize Mr. Marrero, is there anyone from the committee that has a thought on how to proceed forward on this at this point? I mean, I know I have my thoughts, but I want to hear from the committee members first. So Mr. Graney, anybody? No? Okay. Mr. Marrero, did you raise your hand? What's your pleasure, sir?
Well, I just wanted to follow up with anyone that if anyone does have comments and for whatever reason they couldn't comment here or they're seeing this recorded, they can feel free to email oped@holyoke.org. They could also email anyone in the Office of Planning and Economic Development. All our information is on the website. So just, it's not do or die here unless the committee moves forward on something. I also wanted to have the opportunity to address one of the really good questions and concerns on the general effect of adding a property, if I may, Mr. Chair.
You may.
That David White asked. So Mr. White asked or stated a concern on, the kind of a chilling effect on financing for the properties. And this was one of the very early things that we considered in 2012 because we provided several properties on the list. We certainly did not want to have a chilling effect on the real estate market, quite the opposite. So the best explanation of this I can give is that time has been the best counterexample. No property has not been able to get financed because of being on the plan, and I would argue completely the opposite. In order for the HRA to take any action on any property, it has to not only obviously have the resource base to do it, But it has to be completely aligned with what the Department of Housing and Community Development sees textually written as what is the goal there. And so it can't just be arbitrarily done. And if someone's already doing that, there's no magic in just changing ownership. That's not economic development, changing ownership. It's how are you advancing the goal. And so if what's in the goal is already done, then there's really no case for the public action. So every property that we've had on the plan that's sought financing has been approved financing, or at least has not been denied because of the plan. We've had no one approach us to say, "Hey, I'm having this problem. Can you just take my property off the plan?" And it is recorded in the deed, right? It would come up in any due diligence. We've had 0 calls in 8 years.
All right. Okay. I see Mr. Owen's hand up, and I can't remember if he lowered it before. Mr. Owen, are you good?
No, I just want to ask, what is the plan for my building? I mean, what is it you would like to see me do with my building? That's my question. Marcos, I'm sorry.
If you want to answer that one ever so briefly, that'd be great.
Sure. We've discussed it in person, but for the purposes of the record and the public here, I'm happy to address it. The building is of industrial heritage. It's not zoned industrially. It's zoned for downtown business. It's in a transformed residential neighborhood. The idea is, and I will highlight again, this is owner agnostic. This is not about the specific owner. It is a call to action so that could have businesses that are more uses and appearances that are more congruent with the neighborhood. And we met for over an hour, board member Concrete and myself earlier this week, and by all indications, Mr. Owen is aspiring and working in that direction, and so that's great. I mean, that means that's less work for us to do. In my mind, it doesn't change the imperative to add a property to the plan, because there are many benefits of having it there. It transparently says this is a priority for the city, that it's something that we want to pursue. And it actually does make a difference when you're pursuing, a grant, whether it's for public infrastructure, whether it's you're pursuing a grant through mass development, that them are available, like for co-working spaces, for example, or other programming, to say, hey, this property is in our urban renewal plan. This is a key property, and that doesn't require an ownership change, but it does certainly highlight the need to fund and help fund this. So, I mean, if there wasn't that benefit, I mean, honestly, my position would just be that that's fine. Let's take it out. Really, the thing of last resort is acquiring it through some sort of eminent domain to the point where you haven't seen it yet because there's been no interest in doing it. It's complex, it's expensive, and if we do everything right, we seldom, if ever, have to use it.
Okay, so
I thank you for that. I just want to say that in the last 15 years of owning that property, I have spent a lot of my own personal money on that building. I didn't wait for a state grant. So I think that I am really part of trying to benefit Holyoke instead of being a detriment to Holyoke. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Owen. Okay, I guess I'm just going to give it Mike. I don't see a committee members or anything. I'm in no position. I feel like I'm in no position to make a vote on this right now. It would be my intention to table this and to continue this public hearing to a date certain, which I would propose to be October 5th, which is a Monday at 6:30 p.m. And that would probably give any member of this committee or any member of the city council or any member of the public a chance to talk to councilors, talk to Mr. Marrero, talk to the chairman of the board, talk to any committee members on the HRA. So that's a good month away from now. And so I just want to hear from the committee if there's any interest in that proposal.
Yeah, I would make a motion to table till October meeting.
So the motion is made and be seconded to table this, to continue the public hearing to a date certain, which would be Monday, October 5th at 6:30 p.m. That motion is on the table right now under discussion. I hear no discussion. So
I would like to just say that.
Well, who's speaking?
I'm sorry.
Mr. Owen?
Yeah.
Yeah, Mr. Owen, we're all set. Okay, we moved on. Okay, Mr. Owen. All right, thank you. Yeah, Brian. Okay. So that's all right. So right on the motion under discussion from a committee member only, please. I hear none. On the motion, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, Mr. Graney, are you there? He may have bounced off. Well, we still have a quorum anyhow. So motion carries. I'm just going to say unanimous. I can't tell who's here and who's not here, but it sounds like it's 4-0 anyhow. Okay. All right. So we are going to continue this to October 5th. Okay, folks.
Mr. Chairman, can I close my meeting?
Oh, Mr. Chairman, yes, you may.
Okay, thank you. Can I entertain a motion to close the
move.
HRA?
Second.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks, everybody.
Good night.
Okay. All right. It's not the Waltons. Okay. So thank you.
I like that show.
You know, Jay, we all like that show, right? That's a story for another day. Okay. Mr. Marrero, can we take up, in your opinion, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8? I think we can, right?
Yes.
Okay, so I'll take a motion to suspend and to take of the package items 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. If I could get a motion on that.
So moved.
Okay, a motion made and seconded to suspend to take items 3, 4, 5, 6, and 8 up as a package. On discussion, hearing none. On the motion, all in favor? Aye. Okay, so it sounds like that was enough ayes. Okay, I'm going to give an abridged.
Ryan, everyone is muted. Oh, there we go. No. There we
All right. All right. Technically, sorry about that. I was just reading I wasn't looking at the screen. So basically what I said is we're going to take these as a package. We approved that. It's to declare all them surplus available for disposition, and they are 415 Main Street, 417 Main Street, 136 Cabot Street, a Cabot Street parcel identified by assessor's map 0101002, 525 Pleasant Street, 107 Clemente Street. And with that, Mr. Morrell and Mr. Dijak still here? Yes, he is. Okay. So Mr. Morrell, Mr. Dijak are here. Marcos, Johnny, why don't you walk us through, we'll just go in order, 415 Main Street, and then we'll just keep going down the line, okay?
John, I've unmuted you in case you want to talk about it, but you want me to, Mr. Chair, do you want me to share my screen as well?
So we're joined by Councilor Bacon. Welcome. Councilor Murphy has his hand up. I don't know why. Councilor Murphy, do you want to unmute yourself and say something? Yeah. Terry, you're still muted. And now we got a split screen. Okay.
Sorry about that.
Okay. Let's just take a deep breath. Councilor Murphy, Mr. Allen, okay, there we go. Councilor Murphy has the floor.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. And the first two are on Main Street, and I just got a question because I had filed an order back just prior to the virus to change that section of Main Street from Business Highway to Business Central, with the idea that it was going to make those properties potentially more viable. And I just want to ask Marcos or John if I should refile, because we never got to the public hearing because of the virus. If I should refile that and have these be under Business Central. there it is. BC. If I could ask Marco or John.
I admittedly, I don't know where in the jacket it is or whether it needs refiling or not. My position on the policy would be it would still be desirable for this corridor to not be business highway and instead to be business central, because the setbacks would essentially prohibit anything from happening inside any of these properties. Not you could pave it, but any structure, it would basically the side, front, and back setbacks on these small parcels. You can put any structure on it.
Okay, so Marcos, I'm going to hold you off right there. Councilor Murphy, I'm going to hold you off right there. Councilor, your best course of action is to talk to the ordinance chair and
I know it's already too late.
Okay.
We already exceeded the time for having the public hearing, so I have to refile if I'm going to do it. So.
Okay, so I think the answer is yes to your question. So I'll expect you'll file that for September 15th, and maybe the ordinance chair can take it up in a timely fashion. Okay. Okay. So John and Marcos, proceed with 415, and we'll go down the line.
Marcos, if it's okay, I'll take a lead on this a little bit, but just for the DGR's information, we have 6 properties requesting to be declared surplus. We've had really good momentum with some surplus properties in the last year, and we hope that these can continue with adding these, getting them declared surplus and then making them available for sale. The first 2 are at 415, 417 Main Street, separate parcels. If we scroll down to the picture, they're in the same block as where Nueva Esperanza is, and the structure on the left with the X on it, I believe, has been removed or is in the process of being removed. So these are city-owned properties, and there was some detail on the previous slide about the tax taking them out and when they were taken. But basically, we'd like to have this declared surplus and made available for sale.
So John, on my screen, I can only see to the bullet point assess value, and then I can see zoning highway. Is there something else that because I can't, I don't know if anybody else can, I cannot go scroll down any further on this. So how do I see the bottom of your page? And I don't think I got an email on this either. At least I don't have it in my files. So
that's odd. So you can only see those 2 bullet points?
I can see down to assess value and then zoning. Is there something written below that, Marcos?
No,
that's it.
That's the end.
That's the whole page. Okay, good enough.
That's it. And so they're good locations. One of the buildings had a business in it a few years back that had some issues with the business, running the business, and they just closed up. And then it went through some ownership changes, and then eventually the city took it as tax taking. So we can move on to the next parcel, please, Marcos.
Okay,
I think you have that.
So 136 Cabot Street.
136 Cabot is just down from High Street. It's an interesting row house. It has actually, I believe, even though you see the one door in the front of the picture there, if that is opened up, it's actually it has a porch with 2 doors to it. So it's a nice row house. There's some nice things happening right in that section. Some of the abutters have inquired with us about acquiring the property, I think it's been a topic of discussion with our problem property group, because we want to get it into private hands for redevelopment and not become a drain on city resources in terms of codes, inspections, and fire. As we were looking at 136 Cabot, there's a parcel just to the east of it, parcel 2. That's a very, very small parcel, and it's the same thing. An abutter, at least one of the abutters, inquired about purchasing it. You can see it's right between those 2 structures. It's very small, so it just makes a lot of sense to make it available, especially for the abutters. It looks like from that picture, there's already some cars using it and a motorcycle there, but.
Okay, so John, and I see Councilor Sullivan waving his hand, but Okay, so those are the two Cabot Street ones. So those are a series of row house. So that little sliver parcel almost looks like an alleyway.
Exactly.
Okay, so it looks like somebody can maybe use that for parking, I would suppose. And then the one at 136 Cabot, you want to just go back to that for a second?
Sure.
So they're both zone IG.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, is that a problem?
It's not a problem. It actually provides for some more flexible zoning, but it's a residential area, so it makes sense to be redeveloped as residential.
Should it be zone residential?
Probably.
Yeah. I think that whole stretch is, it may have just, I'm not sure the history of how that area was zoned industrial, but it appears to have been that whole stretch there.
Yeah, so why doesn't OPED sort of propose something to the city council? I mean, because that's all, I mean, otherwise you've got, I mean, that, IG is allowed to do other things, as Mr. Marrero rightly knows, and I think every member of this body knows, at least I hope they do. Though there are proposals to change all that, but, is that something that OPED would entertain?
Yeah. And Mr. Chair, we actually have something drafted, prior to COVID, as Councilor Murphy mentioned, big zone changes take time because you have to engage the population, you have a public hearing. So the first one that we put forward was trying to correct zoning in South Holyoke, starting with the Main Street corridor. But we similarly have internally drafted something for this area as well, where these industrial zones that really aren't industrial at all, they're residential, that they should be, this block should be downtown residential. That's kind of what you have. So yeah, happy to do it, happy to share it. It's just been, the last 7 months have put a halt to so many things. Well,
Now that we're all back to work, hopefully we can get back up and run with that. And I would suggest that you contact, and Mr. Murphy, Councilor Murphy can do it. Maybe if you contact the ordinance chair and maybe co-file that, maybe there'll be some motivation to sort of take these up in a timely fashion, and we can sort of proceed accordingly. Okay, Mr. Dijak, 520. I'm sorry, Councilor Sullivan has his hand up. I apologize.
Yeah, John, could you get rid of the "let's cross this one off your list" blue thing in the middle of the screen there, and go back to maybe the previous picture that showed the actual structure? Yeah, and I think there was we can start with that, but you've got a blue screen that says "let's cross this one off your list" right in the middle of the picture.
Mike, I don't even see that. Am I missing it?
Was it another property? This one? No?
I don't know. It could, maybe it's not you. Maybe it's something this city computer they give me is doing now. But in any event, when you look straight at that building, you'll see some new siding put on, a porch or something.
Yep.
All right. With one door in the middle. That's actually two buildings. It's 136 and 138 joined together. And when you go inside, you can walk right between the two buildings. And if you go on the backside, it's I don't know if this has happened recently, but it's begun to cave in also. This building is beyond salvage. It's I think this one has to be seriously considered, whether it's through the problem properties group or whatever, just to move it as fast as possible to demolition.
It's a good suggestion. 138, we're aware, is not city owned, and I think when we had our last problem property group, the consensus was that this could be rehab, but it's a consideration that we can bring back to them. I don't know if that precludes it from being declared surplus, but as I said earlier, there have been inquiries for this property.
Okay, so 138 is owned privately still?
Yes, tax title, land court process. Yeah.
Okay. And what can Councilor Sullivan kind of is familiar with this property? So you open up that door and it leads to actually two properties. So Does that not sound like a curveball, John?
No, I just wasn't sure about the 138 one. I didn't check into that, but I do, now that Councilor Sullivan brought it up, it was discussed at our last problem property group, and he's absolutely correct. As you open it up, it's the two doors there, and as I mentioned earlier, this has been a concern for the fire department and the codes and the inspectors. But with that said, there's also been private interest. I had never, I couldn't say firsthand on the condition, but it is something there has been expressed interest, and we usually try to see if it can be rehabbed.
My problem with the expressed interest is that they're how qualified they are. We have several others right in that neighborhood, right adjacent to the Boys Club, where people have acquired them, done absolutely nothing with them, and we're back in that vicious circle again of reverter clauses and all the rest of the thing. And meanwhile, it's a detriment to the neighborhood. I can tell you without a doubt, whoever's interested in this, I don't know who they are myself, but there is no hope for this building at all whatsoever.
Okay. All right. Okay. So duly noted. John, you want to move on to 525 Pleasant?
Sure. This is just up from, I believe it's between the Dwight and Beacon Avenue block. I wasn't sure if it was just earlier this year or last year that through the building department led the demolition of the structure that was on this building. There was a house that just deteriorated to the point where it needed to be demolished. I believe the abutter to the right, even before the city took ownership, had inquired about buying the property, buying the land, not the building itself. But so this is a good lot and a good potential for new construction there.
Okay. Yeah, I'd want to be. Okay, well, I'm glad the abutter's interested. I suppose there'd be other agencies interested too. So what would be the department's plan to market that parcel? Should we declare it surplus?
Like all these others, we would issue a request for proposals.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, keep going. 107 Clemente.
107 Clemente is one that went to auction a few years ago. Was not developed, and the city actually had to revert back on it, and has since demolished. Actually, a very, very good demolition job by the building department. Very tricky building to demolish, as it abuts the building to the left and is very close to the towers on the right. Right now, it's an empty lot. I think the next slide shows what the vacant lot looks like now. Maybe it was, maybe not, but there was it's a vacant lot now. On the other side, I believe, is that's Clemente Street. So it's a vacant lot now. There has been some discussion with the housing authority, maybe for some green space or parking. So one that we would like to make available and market.
Yeah, the only bummer there is, of course, it goes to the housing authority, and that's the end of the.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's the end of that, right?
Well.
And this is the same housing authority that to date is paying about $3,300 a year with a pilot. Well, it is. So there you go. I know the answer to my own question. So and they haven't offered a nickel more. So this that same housing authority, that by the way just transferred $500,000 to MMDT so it can get more interest on money. That's that same housing authority. I think we're talking about the same one. Holyoke Housing Authority. Is that the one, John?
That's who we're talking about. Yep.
Yeah, I thought so. Okay, so all right. So thank you for that. Are there questions from? You can probably take that down. I think we're all set with the split screen, shared screen. Thank you, gentlemen. Are there questions from counselors on the committee relative to this? These 6 parcels, other than the ones that were raised. Okay, I don't see anyone with their hands up at all in the blue screen at all. I think if I was going to make a motion, I would probably take these separately, and I probably want to take 5 and 6 and table them to get Councilor Sullivan's questions clarified. That's what I would consider doing. I would definitely want to move well, let me see, items 3 and 4. I'd want to move those forward for sure. 525 Pleasant, I'd want to move forward. And then 107 Clemente, I'm going to reserve on that one. But so why don't I take well, Councilor Sullivan, did that make sense to you?
That makes perfect sense to me. Yes.
Okay. So Councilor Sullivan, do you want to make a motion to
yeah, I'd make a motion.
6 on the table.
Okay, yeah, motion to lay 5 and 6 on the table.
Okay. Motion being seconded to lay 5 and 6 on the table. Not debatable on the motion. All in favor? Aye.
All right.
No, I'm not for it. No.
Well, doesn't it's looks like a 2-to-1, so it's and we are in a quorum, so that's laid on the table. So there's that one. Okay, so that's tabled. What about a motion to recommend for adoption 3, 4, and 7?
Motion to approve 3, 4, and 7.
That's motion made and seconded to approve 3 and 4. So recommend for adoption. Under discussion. Hearing none on the motion. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
I said aye.
Okay, I didn't hear. Okay, so that is going forward. That's going forward. On 107 Clemente, I have a question about that. Marcos, who else is interested in that besides the Holyoke Housing Authority? Is there anyone?
I don't know who else is interested. We
yeah. Would you RFP it?
We always do.
Okay.
Even if we know of one who's great, we still RFP it because why not? I mean, one great potential, maybe you have two.
Yeah, it's okay. So, do we recall what the expense was to demo it? The expense to the city?
Don't have that information now.
I think it was 150,000.
What was that, Councilor Murphy? Sorry.
I think it was around 150,000, the original estimate, but I think we did it a little less because we did it in-house. But I know when we had the the building commissioner where we had the money coming back, revolving account, they were originally talking 150, but I think it was less because the city did it with the two young men that we have working on our demolition.
Yeah,
but it's still expensive.
Thank Councilor Sullivan for that. Okay, Mr. Dijak, just remind me what was the outstanding tax balance on 107 Clemente?
1 second, please.
Thank you.
The tax taking amount is listed as 141,000.
141,000.
I don't have the breakdown of how much of that was interest or fees.
Oh no, okay, so if we just do a ballpark, tax taking and demo, we'll just ballpark it, say more or less $290,000 to do that, to take it and tax title, to demolish it, and then potentially give it to the Holyoke Housing Authority. And that'll generate to the city of Holyoke $0 because they're going to use it for green space. Okay, I'll take a motion on that one. Anyone?
Mr. Chairman.
So
I totally in agreement with you. You're saying here all we're doing, if this is the same as the rest, is all we're doing is declaring it surplus. Any sale of the property, even if it was to HRA, would still have to be approved by us.
No doubt. No, I get it.
So I
made my point.
Yep. So I would make a motion to approve it, item number 8 also.
Okay, motion made and seconded to recommend for adoption item number 8 on the motion. Discussion, hearing none. All in favor? Aye. Okay. Gladys, did you vote?
Yes, I said aye.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, sometimes somehow I can hear you say
Can
it,
you
but
hear me?
now I can't hear you vote. Sorry about that. Okay. Okay, so we got that done. Very good. Now we'll turn my page here. I'll take a motion to take number 9 off the table, please.
So moved.
Motion made second, remove number 9 from the table. On discussion, hearing none. All in favor? Aye. Item 9, order that the city council accept the amendments to the HRA URP. The city council authorized HRA to approve minor non-substantial language changes to the urban renewal plan. So this is filed under my name by the OPED. Marcos, do you want to guide us through here a little bit?
Yeah, this would just be the formal vote. Obviously, this is pending the closure of the public hearing. So this is just the language that we would use once the hearing is closed and the council wants to act.
Okay, great. So motion to table.
Motion to table.
Motion made and seconded to table. On the motion, all in favor? Aye. Okay, motion is tabled. I'll take a motion to take number 10 off the table.
So moved.
Motion made and seconded to remove number 10 off the table. On discussion, hearing none. On the motion, all in favor? Aye. Filed by Peter Murphy, order that Director of Planning and Economic Development meet with the committee to discuss the future of the Armory building. Question, does the city have any reputable offers for the property which can be implemented in the next couple of years? Question, if not, would the demolition of the remaining structure create an opportunity to construct several new homes at that intersection? Mr. Marrero, proceed.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm going to share once again the screen. The timing on the order is very good. At the end of 2019, we got a technical assistance grant. That's to say, we didn't get any money. We got the promise of help from Mass Development. And we applied for it. It's called a site readiness technical assistance grant. And the subject of our application was, we need to better understand this building because we've had soft interest in it over the years, but the question has always been, how sturdy are the buildings inside, and how realistic a development would. Most recently, we had a keen interest from One Holyoke CDC. That had been the subject of a CPA proposal to do due diligence on the site, both physically, right, like environmental, doing an environmental study, but also doing a market study for a concept that would involve veterans or senior housing at the site. Of course, that was in the first CPA application round. It was very competitive, and understandably, there's just so many dollars to go around. And that proposal would not have produced a bricks and mortar outcome. It would have been, it would have been a study. So upon the striking out on getting CPA funds, we proceeded to get this grant from Mass Development, and we took a portion, the most critical of that, which was the engineering study, and we asked Mass Development through their contractors to examine this site. And so you've gotten a summary. We tried to condense this as much as possible, but essentially, and funny enough, at the first site visit, the engineer actually fell through the floor. I mean, it's not funny, but it's just coincidentally, when we were all there, the engineer fell through the floor in a portion of the building that there was floor until he stepped on it. And so we had to issue a small rescue operation. Folks from DPW came, and he was extracted from the basement. It was fortuitous. We were trying to get to the basement to take some pictures of the floor, to see their condition. We just didn't plan on it being so unplanned for that gentleman. He was all right. He wasn't seriously injured, but it was a significant scare. Essentially, what the engineers have come up with is the site in its entirety is not for reuse inside. It's not really rehabable. I mean, anything technologically is possible. You can throw as much money at something as you want, and I guess you could do it. If we got to the moon, we can rehab anything. But realistically, it's really not rehabable. So we pose the question: so what of it could be salvaged, recognizing that portions of our community would recognize the historic significance of this building? And so most of the study actually became an exercise in if we were to save the exterior historic significance of the building, but yet kind of carve out and gut out everything else, so that the building was either a facade to an empty back or the facade to a new building. What would that kind of look like financially? What would be the cost of something like that? So stabilizing the outside and using the inside in fashion. And so we provided three kind of general buckets for what that would look like. The first one, the lightest use, right? So 3 standalone walls. The back wall that used to they used to be the transition to the I forget what you call the part of the armory where you would store stuff, right? It used to be the basketball courts. Taking down that wall. And so you could have anything from a regional farmers market, kind of like freight farms, food production, like stuffing freights in there, an outdoor restaurant, or some combination of an indoor restaurant, outdoor restaurant, or simply put a monument, which it could be a monument to either by its own, the building and its character, or it could be something related to veterans, understanding the the interplay of the armory and such. So something like bare bones, like what would that seem to cost? And the estimate based on the engineering and looking at the plans and the site visits was just over $1 million or something like that, which would include some basic build out of the site, not just preserving the walls. Concept 2 would be filling it out with a residential type construction behind those walls, and so something like multi-floors, and that would be something in the range of $5.5 to $5.9 million. And then concept 3 would be a commercial kind of like office space, or more built out commercial. It could be a mix of office and retail, but that was more in the $6.2 to $6.7 million. So this is we actually got this not too long ago. We haven't had a lot of time to digest and see how we could actually go from, okay, this is what it looks like financially. How could we pair that potentially with a project and some interest? And we definitely haven't been able to. But it's actually the first time we publicly speak about this. We've told the historical commission, but we had an intention at the next meeting of talking about it. So this is world premiere right here.
Marcos, I think Marcos and John, thank you very much. Before I recognize Councilor Sullivan, who has his hand up, Councilor Murphy is the maker of the order. Did you want to follow up with anything, Councilor Murphy?
Yeah, thank you. I did get the information about the armory today, and again, if I'm looking at the cost and the potential benefit, and from what I'm seeing, we're going to have to spend $625,000 just to shore up the building, if I'm reading that correctly. My goal is, we need to come to a conclusion, whatever we're going to do, for the people that live in that neighborhood. And to me, the potential of, if we're not doing any of these things, of actually demolishing the armory and putting some housing that would be complementary to the housing to its north, where there are 2-family and single-family houses. And I also would then look at going down Sargent Street to Walnut Street, where you got those vacant lots that are also causing some other issues. So potentially that could be an area where we get it cleaned up. I saw the figures. I also, I'm assuming if we're talking about doing the light use in the farmer's market, that would be probably not paying taxes. Whereas if we did some homes, we would be getting some tax revenues, and also being complementary to what's already on that street. So again, I just want to move the process. I know people keep telling what's going on. When when the building fell apart with the gym, I heard, and I wasn't there at that time, but I started getting here when I got on the council, and then we need to make a decision. If we aren't going to do it, then we need to remove it, and let's put something there that's going to enhance the environment around the senior center as well. Thank you.
Councilor Sullivan.
Yeah, pretty much want to echo Councilor Murphy here. Just seeing temporary shoring costs that are in excess of the demolition costs. I grew up in that neighborhood. As a kid, I played basketball there. Not very well. I probably would have been schooled by Councilor McGivern. But it's sad to see it go, but seeing the costs of the future use and just the cost of temporary shoring, I'm afraid. I'm just afraid its time has come. So.
Yeah, that's a great photo right there. Mike, and I'm not asking you to quote me, but what would the demo cost be, do you think, for the balance of it?
I'd have to do a little more research. I'm pretty sure all the abatement was done. There could be a little bit of a lead issue. I'm not sure what else, but that's one that would be right in the wheelhouse of our own city demolition team.
Okay,
I would imagine somewhere in the neighborhood of under 300,000, 250,000.
Wow. Okay.
Half the cost of temporary shoring.
Yeah, we asked Damien in preparation of this, and his rough estimate was 175,000.
No, that's even better. Yep.
Okay, that's great. Yeah, John and Marcus, I'm just going to ask you to email this report to the whole council, I guess, if you would, or at least get to Ryan, and Ryan can disseminate it to the rest of us. Okay. That being said, Councilor Murphy, are you all set?
I am. I just, I think I would like the committee to eventually make a recommendation based on the information we got, that we need to think about demolishing it and then look to get a plan together for what we're going to do.
Well, I don't know if that's
okay.
The committee that does that, but we can, or the council does that, but we should get something from, because that would require financial transfer, right? So that's got to come from the executive side. Councilor McGivern has his hand up.
Thank you, Councilor Bartley. I recognize the two speakers and understand they make good points. Not only does this building have a unique history within the city of Holyoke, which includes some of the best high school basketball games ever played against rival high schools. There's a lot of potential here that I don't think we should give up on it yet. Just on a side comment, one of the saddest things about this is when Governor Weld was in office, he offered not only to sell the building to the city as surplus property for a couple of bucks, he was willing to give $2 million to renovate it. We had the Holyoke Boys and Girls Club, the Holyoke YMCA, a number of neighborhood associations interested in working with the city in developing this. And unfortunately, at the time, our mayor chose not to take Governor Weld up on the deal. But be that as it may, I still think there's potential here. And I think we should give our economic development people some time to come up with a good plan and look for some private dollars to invest in it.
Okay. All right. Councilor Sullivan, you're all set because you just got to lower your hand when you have a minute. Okay. So Councilor Murphy's set. I'm set. I'll take a motion that's been complied with.
Motion that the order has been complied with.
Motion made, seconded, has been complied with. Under discussion. Hearing none on the motion. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
There you go. Okay. Okay. That's good there. So we're moving on, moving west. Okay. I'll take a motion to take number 11 off the table.
Motion to take 11. Should we take 12 with it also?
We should, Counselor Sullivan. So motions made and second to suspend the rules and to take items 11 and 12 off the table. On discussion, hearing none on the motion, all in favor? Aye. Counselor Murphy, order that
I'd like to just
OPED.
note that the order I filed is also with Counselor Bacon. That should have been listed. She should have been listed on that.
And Counselor Bacon is duly recognized by that. Counselor Murphy, you are right as rain. Okay, so order that OPED meet with DGR to provide an update on the current plans for the former Geriatric Authority building. Are we planning to seek new proposals in the near future? That's 11. 12, communication from Marcus Marrero, status and sale of former geriatric site, which I just happen to have right here. Which is it's a communication that's been in the jacket since last November. My bad. But it said essentially, dear counselors, I write you on the status of the sale of the former geriatric authority. Up to recently, city signed a PNS with B2 Health, a partnership with U.S. Health Vest and Bay State Health. Boy, what a crew that was. However, as has widely been reported, the partnership between both entities has dissolved upon the decision of such dissolution. At the conclusion of the due diligence period and in terms of the PNS, they would not seek to move forward. While Bay State Health remains interested in pursuing any proposal for them as the developer of new partnership would require a new public bidding process, so the city can consider all interest. For this reason, we are reissuing a new RFP. Which will be published December 2nd and will be out until at least the end of January 2020. We expect to be able to bring a proposal before the council for approval in late winter or early spring 2020. So that is what is before us. Mr. Marrero, you have the floor.
Yeah, so following that letter, we put the property out for request for proposals. It closed at the beginning of February, or I don't remember the exact date now. It seems like 10 years ago. We got one proposal from a partnership between Bay State and O'Connell Development for the site. At the time that COVID hit, that was essentially the time we're going to be reviewing the proposals. So that review got delayed. Over the summer, we did review the proposal. We've discussed and talked with them several times. And during that time, it was revealed to us, and I think to the world, and even to them, who their partner was. It doesn't seem like they had their partnership completely baked by the time that they put in their proposal. But in the midst of this, they have, and that has become public knowledge through the press. Kindred Healthcare is their partner in the proposal. So we feel like we're soon in a position to potentially move it forward. The delay as of late has actually been because Kindred Healthcare is playing a similar role to what U.S. Health Vest was playing in their prior proposal, which would be that they are the developer of the site and the manager of the physical space. The difference is because they are, their arrival didn't match up with our timeline, right? We have a property, we're putting it out for sale. They actually didn't see the site prior to its availability on sale, as U.S. Health Vest had, which had been on the site a couple of times and did some basic diligence. So they find themselves, and off of their request, they want to make sure that it's right for them before the executive moves the proposal forward. So that's where we are. In fact, they have someone visiting either tomorrow or early next week. So as soon as we're able to, we can move that forward.
Councilor Murphy, Councilor Bacon?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, Marcos, I think you said you went out again in December?
We put it out in December, and it was out for a couple of months. So it was December, and you have the holiday season, so
Yep. And then we got the virus.
Yeah, because if you only give a month during December, then half that time, any organization isn't there, private or public. People are taking their vacation, so we let it out there till it was, I think, the first week of February or something like that.
So there was in the previous RFP, I believe you had 3 proposals, and one of them was for housing that we considered, but at that point you thought, if I remember correctly, we didn't think they had enough experience to do that kind of volume housing. Did that entity not consider again, or did we have discussions with them?
No, we thought they were going to propose, but they did not. They actually have. So the first time we did the RFP, we actually spliced a piece of the former geriatric off, and that group that wanted to do housing, they won the RFP, and we're under purchase and sale with them for a portion of the land to do the housing, and that hasn't started yet. So okay. It seems like they just figured they weren't ready to proceed with that when they haven't been able to do the other project.
Okay, and I'm going to ask you a question, and you may not know the answer, but obviously does the mayor have any say in this contract?
Absolutely. I mean, the mayor's the one who puts it before the council.
Okay.
We haven't submitted our recommendation to the mayor.
Okay.
So technically speaking, the mayor has made no decision on this. But as someone who's been on the committee, I'm just letting you know exactly where it is. We feel like we've done what is expected of us as diligence, and as Councilor Bartley says, the first time I do this, so I know the concerns or can anticipate the concerns of councilors, and I want to make sure that we're getting that information. And not only that you can take my word for it, but to the extent possible that I can provide documentation for you, so you know that what we're saying is accurate.
I trust you.
We feel like we've gotten that, but Kindred really wanted to be able to look at the site. I mean, imagine taking on a large liability. To give you an idea, demolishing that property we've estimated to be around just under $3 million. So it's reasonable for them to want to kick the tires a little bit because they got to this land.
Can I ask you one more? And so, has there been any discussion with Kindred or Bay State about the other hospitals that we're talking about? I'm assuming they're still talking about closing them, and I know the mayor was out at the geriatric authority protesting the fact that they were being closed. So have we done any discussion with them about either potentially leaving one of those sites or 2 of those sites and doing something that would not take away psychiatric care in those other areas? And have we done anything in terms of trying to provide some job security if in fact 1 or 2 or all 3 of those facilities close? Is that part of something we can do?
I haven't brought, to be completely honest, I haven't brought it up yet. It's something that I'm actually looking into because it's been brought to my attention. You're not the first one to bring it to mention. So I'm looking to, number one, there's 2 things that we need to look at. Number one, and actually I'll limit it to this for public purposes.
Okay.
Because I didn't sour any potential conversations. But the number one and most important thing is what ability we have to put legally to put other restrictions. So, yeah, I'm happy to have an in-person conversation or a phone call.
Okay.
When it has to do with real estate conversations and negotiations, I just want to be very sensitive to what's put out publicly.
Okay.
But I'm happy to talk to you about it.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Councilor Bacon?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Would it be fair to say, Marcos, that the proposal is otherwise pretty much the same as the first one, except that the partners are different in terms of the services that were being proposed, or is this going to be a whole new proposal?
It is incredibly similar, yes.
Thank you.
Okay. What's your pleasure, Terry, Linda? What's your pleasure on this?
I mean, I just did it to, my goal was to get an update to see where we were at and if there was nothing going on, to try to make sure we got something going on. Obviously, there is something. If the Bay State thing does not work out, I certainly hope that we go out and secure bids as much as we can and try to accelerate some kind of improvement at the Geriatric Authority. I know I drive by there frequently, and it looks worse and worse as we go.
Would it be fair, through the chair to Marcos, for it to remain tabled in committee, and then it could be followed up on at the next meeting in terms of this site visit and the developments? Would that be enough time?
Oh, the question is to me.
Yeah, she went through me to you.
Yeah, I mean, one way or another, I mean, I'm not going to tell you how to do the council stuff. One way or another, I expect to have a go, no go in October. Right? That's my hope. I don't know if October 5th have a resolution, but if this is moved forward, it has to be filed with the council.
Right. So I think I don't think there's any rush to move it to city council between, we're going to meet October 5th as it is. Councilman McGivern.
Just a couple questions, Mr. Chairman, to Marcus, if I could. Has the Gondera ever paid the back rent that they owed the city, the Geriatric Authority, and the city on the property?
I'm really not well versed on that agreement or what they had to pay or what they owed.
I'll tell you what we'll do is, as a committee, why don't we just do it right now? I'll make a motion right now to send a, Ryan, are you still with us, I hope?
Yeah, I'm right here, Dave.
Okay, there you go. There must be a huge delay between here and Meadowbrook. Okay, so yeah, I'm going to make a motion that we this committee sends a communication to the law department following up on Councilor McGivern's question relative to the Gandara rent. So the motion is this: that the law department send a communication right to me as a chair. In anticipation of us taking this up on October 5th, what is the status of the back rent or the rental situation between the city of Holyoke and Gandara? That's my motion. If I could get a second on that, that'd be great. I don't have a second. Okay, fails for a second. Okay. Councilor Sullivan has hand up. No, actually, Councilor McGivern still has a fourth.
If I could just finish real quick on a second note. I fully understand bringing psych services into a building like this, and certainly understand the need for psych services, especially with what's happened. Providence closing their wing, and I can't believe the city didn't get more upset about that. But it's something that would look great if you did get a private company in there. But I also see this potential this area to be marketed much different. There's an incredible view at the top of the hill there. And there is a lot of room to work with there to put something in there commercially that could take advantage of that. And certainly with the crossroads of 91 and 90, it would make a lot of sense. And I hope that's in consideration as you market the property if any of these deals continue to fall apart. The other thing is, we've learned this in the past, and I think this is just another bad example, is this building has not been secured to protect it. There is still vandalism going on. There is still windows being broken. I don't know what the shape of the roof is. And it's obviously two buildings, one that's older than the other. And I think the longer we don't protect this building, the less value it's going to have for any developer in any proposal. That's my 2 cents.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Sullivan, the hands up next. Councilor Sullivan.
Yeah, in answer to Joe's question about Gandara, I think we had this. Maybe it was somewhere else along the line or in another committee, but I believe that Gandara's tax liability was offset by some work they had done on the place. And I'm 99% sure of that, and that we had visited this once before in another form.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Bacon?
Yes, I had filed an order in that regard, and legal had investigated it and given, I don't remember the details, but the matter was settled between the city and DARA.
Oh, wonderful. So if you could, if hopefully either Ryan has that or if one of the councilors has that, we can set a communication.
I think Crystal would have a record of it.
Even better. Okay, so we can just administratively, Ryan, if you could just ask law department for a copy of whatever settlement or documentation, and follow up with all of us. So because I forgot about it myself. Okay. Okay, thank you, Ryan. The makers seem to us to want to table it, which I certainly will, and we can take it up October 5th. So I'll take a motion, please.
Motion to table.
Motion made and seconded to table. On the motion, all in favor?
Aye.
I take it that's 3-0. Okay. All right. I'll take a motion to take number 13 off the table, please.
So moved.
Motion made and Gladys, you got to say second.
Yes, second. I'm sorry.
There you go. All right. Motion made and seconded to take item number 13 off the table. Discussion, hearing none on the motion. All in favor? Aye. Filed by Gladys LeBron Martinez, ordered that the city begin to find ways to address the appearance of High Street with the blighted buildings and other space abandonment. This has been a constituent's request. Gladys, so you have the floor.
Yes. So I've received and gotten texts and emails about this, the condition of High Street, and of course they're also addressing the panhandling situation. So I have explained what has been done and what is happening and why we really cannot get rid of so much panhandling for some ordinance that are not in our hands, that are state kind of responses. So there's still questions regarding Essex Street building. There's also the building down on High Street, and some lots that are still open that I know that are part of the urban development, but I wanted this to be a public, that is being heard publicly, so that people know that we're really considering to address some of these areas, but that is on the record of our meetings, that if anyone ever wants to really follow, they can follow and see what is going to happen with these areas. And if I know that sitting on the Holy Redevelopment Authority, I know what plans are being done, but is there anything else that we can allow Marcus to share, if there's any consideration as a gateway corridor, that it is the entrance of our city, just like it is Main Street? What is the plans also for High Street as a corridor or a gateway?
Okay, so why don't we do it this way? So Marcos, from if I may, and not to put you on the spot, but this is what it is. From if I'm coming off if I'm approaching Holyoke on 391, which is a major gateway, one of the first things I generally would see would be a panhandler standing on the corner. Then I would take a right onto High Street. So why don't you walk me down High Street as best you can with the major improvements that have been made on High Street between 2012 and August, or whatever today's date is, August, whatever it is, 6th, 2020. So between 2012 and 2020, from High Street to the, to Lyman Street, why don't we just get the major improvements that have been made on that corridor, and then to date, and we'll hit those highlights for Councilor LeBron Martinez. And then once we get past those highlights, what do we have up for future attractions?
So the High Street has actually not seen a large amount, to my knowledge, of investment, particularly on the southern side. So it is a prevalent and ongoing blight problem, which is a big reason why we have modified Area 4 to go further south on High Street, and added properties there, some which are likely to be demolished, like the one next to the fire station, the one next to what used to be the Hotel Essex, and some of the vacant properties. If you kind of look at, I think of Dwight Street. I think of High Street in kind of three big chunks. if you're doing that exercise, Mr. Chairman, of taking a right on High Street, that first part of High Street, you probably have 3.5 blocks up to the fire station, which it has some health and vibrancy. You still have a street that has trees. You still have viable sidewalks and buildings that face the street. You have residential and commercial buildings, a couple of parking lots that face the street, but there's still that fabric, that original fabric of Holyoke there. But then very quickly it devolves into a section of High Street that I'm sure over the years it saw buildings deteriorate and have to be either demolished or burnt down. You also see some auto uses, which for whether you're driving or even worse, if you're the pedestrian, it does add to, and this isn't against any particular business, but auto uses in general, particularly when you have large swaths of parking facing the sidewalk, it contributes to this sense of vacancy, even if it's not vacant, and of blight. So you have parking lots, auto uses, and some vacant property in front of and right after, just north of the fire station. The Family Dollar has a large parking space. You have a laundromat that has a parking lot in front of it. So it creates kind of this vacuum feeling if you're going through it. You have the back of the Congregation of Zion, which is also a large parking lot.
I mean, it's over, like, playoffs, no more?
Oh, no, we were up 2-0 in the series, but now we're only up 2-1.
Oh, okay.
Sucks. I mean, we were
Ryan,
up 2 points, 0.5 seconds.
Ryan,
I did Ryan a favor and I muted him.
Yeah, if you know how to do that, because I don't know how to do it.
He had to make me a co-host so I could share my screen. So
Ryan, I haven't watched the end of the game yet.
Okay.
Sorry.
You haven't? Jeez. Don't.
Oh, he's unmuted again.
I am unmuted. Yeah, I heard what Joe said. Don't watch the end of the game, Joe, if you haven't seen it.
Okay, so so
I did you a favor, muted you.
Yeah, did us all a favor. Okay, so second part. So second part, we had third part.
After Congregation of Zion, you see more of that pattern emerge. There is a parking lot that's along with a corner parking lot, which contributes to that impression at the intersection of High and Cabot. You have the municipal parking lot, which we talked about at the beginning, and when we were describing Area 4, the renewal plan, the HAPCO building, and the old Hammerman Hardware. So that's kind of where you get that middle section, which is in the toughest shape, and really shapes your impression as you come into Holyoke. That's why I really want to add more attention there over the next 5 years. That's really, as we start getting stuff going in South Holyoke, I think this is really the next big frontier for prioritization in city actions. After Essex Street, you start seeing a sea change. You start seeing active businesses. There's a pizzeria. There's a supermarket. There's Old San Juan Bakery, the church. There's a lot more stuff. There's Key Bank right on that corner. And even after Appleton, like almost every building has tenancy, certainly on the first floor, if not also in the upper floors. And of course, after Suffolk, that's where you get to the kind of the government quadrangle, for lack of a better term, where you also have City Hall. And north of that, you have most of it is actually been either preserved or preserved and with tenancy. So the northern end of High Street is the healthiest part of it, but that middle section is really devoid from private occupancy. In many cases, any type of construction, and even the right of way, you could have more or better maintained trees or more landscaping on the parking lots that face or vacant lots that face. So all of that plays into it, where you travel that corridor and it feels like desolate. Because it lacks building and lacks activity or even trees.
All right. Thank Marcos. That was a great job. Okay, Gladys, what's your pleasure?
Well,
hold on. I'll get to the question, but I want to make it the order say what you know. Or do you want to follow up with that, or do you want to?
Yes, I do, Marcus. I know that many years ago, Greenfield, I believe it was Greenfield, who received some, they went after some funds that I helped them kind of better, make their the entrance, something like that, look better. And I think it happened in Palmer too. Is that something that if there's any resources available that we can begin at least even by little parts of the area, not necessarily, I know that not all High Street can be done. But right now, I want to ask the second question is the building next to Haberman. No one has ever been interested in that particular building. That's been closed there like almost, 15, 20 years now, I believe it is. Anyone ever has approached us to have an interest of that building? Is it in bad condition? Why is it there that no one has to?
Yeah, I mean, it's a mix of factors. The longer a building is vacant, the harder it is to have, right? The more deterioration, and it's in that what I would call that middle section of High Street, which is it's harder to do something there if you're just an island in and of yourself. Part of the reason why we were adding Haberman Hardware to the parking lot is because sometimes bigger is better and is easier. If your island is big enough where you are the entire half block and a parking lot on the other side, then you're no longer in the middle of this desolate area. You're a continuation of the healthier part of High Street, which I estimate begins around the intersection with Essex Street. But yeah, no question. I mean, I haven't personally been into that building, but the sense that I've found from others is that it is in tough shape, and any 3 or 4 story building that has been vacant for a long time needs a good amount of investment. The good news here, I mean, because a lot of this is bad news. The good news is actually quite independent from any specific action that the city has taken. Or I should say, not that the city has taken. The city has been involved through other means, not from OPED or the HRA. There has been a pretty nice anchor in new investment between Hampshire Street, Worcester Place, and Cabot Street. Just next to the Cabot Street properties, just between those 2 Cabot Street properties that we talked about. There was one gentleman who I was walking the area, coming from meetings with other developers there. One gentleman stopped me on the street. He said how he spent his entire life savings on three row houses. One of them he lives on, the other 2 he rents and he's rehabbed. On Worcester Place, we have new ownership on the northern side of Worcester Place that's fixed up the building of Valley Opportunity Council on the southern side of Worcester Place. And then on Hampshire Street, kind of facing the fire department, Whitman Properties has acquired 3 of the 4 building rows, and I had the opportunity in January to tour those. He's been doing a fantastic job. So there is change happening just in the back of High Street, and that really strengthens our ability to point out to, hey, there are things happening here. Where we could connect, we could do some simple things, even if it's not directly on High Street, but even just like fixing the sidewalk on Worcester Place, connecting into High Street. We've begun a conversation with the Congregations of Zion, see how we can, leveraging our tree nursery as we do like sidewalk improvements. How can we get them to do, kind of like sweat equity kind of stuff? We can provide the trees and start slowly making changes. And this may, this on the face of it can seem like really small potatoes, that it's not addressing the magnitude of the issue, but it's the kind of stuff that creates momentum and even our case for grantors to say, if this is a priority, how does it stack up to other places where they're trying to make a gateway change? And what kind of partners do you have around the gateway to start making that change? So it's small stuff like this that start the movement towards something bigger.
Thank you. I think I've answered my question. Thank you.
Councilor Sullivan.
Hey, thanks. And I really want to thank Gladys for this order. I'm just going to briefly, the order states that the city begins to find ways to address the appearance of High Street with blighted buildings and other open space abandonment. The city council, and probably Councilor Murphy can help me with the exact timeline on this, sent to the mayor's office a request to come to us with a proposal for either bonding or use of stabilization funds to spend $1 million or $2 million to start really taking an aggressive effort to do this. And we have had no response at all from the executive office to this order. All right, that's number one. Number two, when we talk about the panhandlers and all the other situations, we've got a problem of non-police enforcement. When I drive down High Street and I see people riding on a bike in traffic with a 24-ounce can of Natty Ice, people sitting in front of what I call the former Rowan's newsroom, sitting on the sidewalk, drinking out of a paper bag, all right? That's public intoxication, all right? I understand all the other things that have been presented to us over the last several years, but there's no reason for them not to at least be thrown in jail for 4 hours protective custody. We don't have to go through any court procedures, bring any charges or anything else, but just pick them up and put them away. And this isn't being done. That's public intoxication and open alcoholic beverage. And that could be stopped right now, instantly. All right. And there's just no enforcement to these laws going on at all. And as far as the blighted buildings and the rest of the condition on the northern end of High Street, we've got a building where the roof blew off. I'm not sure. To me, it's the old Warsaw Diner. Nothing is, work was started on it, never finished. Even across from City Hall, we have trees growing out of the bricks on the building above the Hoyoke Equipment Company. It's just not happening at all whatsoever, as far as I'm concerned.
Thank you. Councilor Bacon?
Muted.
There you
My
go.
hand should have been lowered.
Okay,
Sorry.
Councilor Murphy?
Yes, I just want to offer comments related to Councilor Sullivan. Yes, we did. The city council unanimously approved, and I believe it was about October of last year, an idea of working with the mayor to take down somewhere between 10 and 12 of the worst buildings in the city. The mayor indicated that he was in favor of that, but could we come up with more specifics? We worked with the problem building committee. It came up with, I think, 10 or 11 buildings, and it was about a $1.7 million. But then we also talked about doing some equipment which could lower the cost of the demolition. That passed unanimously, and we're correct. I mean, when we know we got buildings that are not going to be renovated, we're doing a disservice to the people in each of those neighborhoods by leaving them stand when we could, in fact, make the investment and still be spending the same amount of money per year, except taking down 10 or 12 or 15 buildings instead of 1 or 2 or 3 buildings. And so I agree with Councilor Sullivan and Councilor LeBron Martinez. I agree that we need to make a significant difference, not just on downtown High Street, but also in other areas of the downtown, so that everybody has a chance to live in a neighborhood where they can say, you know, I'm not living next to a vacant lot. I'm not living next to a building that's falling down. And we need to make that investment. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, if you just lower your hands, Councilor Sullivan, Councilor Murphy. I mean, you guys have been doing this for a bit. If you just, because your hands are still up, you just do that. Thank you. Okay, Councilor Brown Martinez, what's your pleasure? You good to go, or do you want to table this for further discussion, or what do you think?
I hate to see that I want to see that we have a response, like what's the next step, plans, if there's anything we can follow up with the last order then that you guys filed regarding and we all voted on, to see where can we find the funds to at least start. I know that it's a lot of money to do them all, but at least start to show some improvement on High Street, at least. Or some plan of encouraging even the business owners to paint the facades, make it look better, so that it gives a different look to the neighborhood. If there is any opportunities like that, I leave it at. I think it's been complied with my end. The answers that I was looking for, but I don't think it should like be said that doesn't need to be followed up. So at least this order has been complied with the answer, but I'd like to bring this back up some other time again.
So what we'll do is, I think that's a motion. I'm going to second that motion under discussion. That it's been complied with. We can at least talk about it on September 15th. Gladys, you're welcome to talk about it. You're welcome to file further orders. I hope you do. Hope you continue to do it, and you just do what you do. Okay? Any other discussion on this? Hearing none. The motion is made and seconded. It's been complied with. On the motion, all in favor? Aye. Okay. As we know, our next meeting is the 5th of October. For this committee, our next city council meeting is the 15th at 7 o'clock. And one last motion will do it, okay?
Motion to adjourn.
Motion has been a second to adjourn. On the motion, all in favor? Aye. We are adjourned. Thank you.